Chapter 1325. A heavy and oppressive power slowly emerged from the depths of this world of absolute frost. Yu Yuan, who had been paying attention to the changes in the outside world, was shocked again. When he saw the frigid snow bear sink into the depths of the sea again, he saw an even more shocking scene through the dragon beheading platform. The Milky Way in the outside world suddenly stopped moving. He knew that it wasn't the galaxy that had stopped moving, because it was stationary to begin with. What had truly stopped moving was this world of absolute frost that had always been moving without a fixed location. Such a huge star that had always been floating. What kind of power could make an entire world suddenly stop moving? What kind of terrifying power was this? Gu Xingkue! Shirala screamed. She no longer cared about the relationship between him and Jining Shuang. Impatiently, she transformed into a bolt of lightning and flew into the depths of the sea. Yu Yuan even saw the dark domain cold well suddenly darken, and immediately after, spatial ripples surged out. Clearly, Shirala had activated the hidden power of the dark domain cold well midway and communicated with the Shura of Gojoseon. Whoosh! Yu Yuan, who was standing on the dragon beheading platform, followed closely behind and headed towards the depths of the sea where the cold abyss was hidden. Boom! Boom boom boom! Along the way, he heard the earth rumble and saw snow mountains and glaciers collapse. This caused Yu Yuan to be extremely shocked. He seemed to see rays of sword light flowing out of the cold abyss at the bottom of the sea. The sword light scattered in this world of absolute frost and cruised in the depths of the earth's core. With unimaginable power, it forcefully broke the laws of the earth. As a result, the strange star that had always been floating slowly stopped in the void. Such divine power and sword power could only belong to the two legendary figures who had cultivated their nascent spirits and stood at the peak of Howran. And the only one who fit the true meaning of the sword could only be Gu Xingkue. After all, he was the sword of earth. Soon, Yu Yuan arrived at the vast depths of the sea after Shirala. He lowered his head and searched. He vaguely saw the enormous figure of the frigid snow bear moving recklessly under the sea. It's very smart. Yu Yuan noticed that the frigid snow bear was obviously on guard this time. It didn't go straight to the bottom of the sea or come into close contact with the mouth of the frigid abyss. Therefore, it didn't face Gu Xingkue's monstrous sword intent head-on. Under the sea, there was actually ice and snow drifting about. There were boundless icy lights and spikes flying about. The ice light and spikes were clearly clashing with some of the sword light, creating a dazzling light that even Yu Yuan, who was on the surface of the sea, felt dazzled. Shirala became excited, beaming with joy as she hooted and repeatedly said, "Good!" One heaven-shaking, earth-shattering roar after another came from the frigid realm snow bear. The infinite cold energy of the entire absolute cold world, and even the cold energy of the entire Firefly star zone, was crazily pouring in. It surged into the deep sea below, towards the frigid snow bear, and turned into its power to fight Gu Xingkue. Yu Yuan was secretly moved. Both he and Shiala realized that it wasn't Gu Xingkue who was secretly swinging his sword at it or this part of the world. Instead, it was because Gu Xingkue had ambushed it out of anger when it had almost recovered from its injuries. Therefore, it had taken the initiative to challenge Gu Xingkue. With its strength, with this part of the world, and with the entire Firefly star zone. As expected of a fierce bear. Shirala was filled with deep veneration. Then, she quietly sent a message back to the Dark Realm, telling Shura of Gojoseon not to worry and not to rush over. Do you know that it was injured by Gu Xingkue because it was trying to harvest those frigid crystals because of you? Gu Xingkue is indeed powerful and an unparalleled sword immortal, but it shouldn't have suffered so much here in the Firefly star zone. Shirala said indignantly. Yu Yuan fell silent. He sighed inwardly, knowing that she might be right. Gu Xingkue, the sword of earth, could only be so deadly in the Howran star zone. In his opinion, This miraculous frigid snow bear's battle prowess should be second only to a real star behemoth. In this place, the frigid snow bear's true strength seemed to be even stronger, and it possessed the terrifying blood power of a Howran demon god. How could it have been reduced to such a sorry state by Gu Shinkue? Roar! The frigid snow bear beat its chest and roared. Thousands of streaks of icy light and frigid lightning condensed into a strange law of ice in the depths of the sea and flew towards the mouth of the frigid abyss. Even the sword light that shot out of the mouth of the frigid snow bear couldn't shatter those streaks of icy light in an instant. Gu Shinkue offended it, so he has to suffer its wrath and be taught a lesson. Xiala's mood suddenly improved. She smiled as she explained to Yu Yuan, "It's not afraid of the destruction of this frigid star zone. It's not even afraid of the disappearance of the firefly star zone." Gu Shinkue's sword light consumed and destroyed the frost power that should have flowed into Howran. Just watch. Watch Gu Shinkue take a step back, and watch his sword light retreat into Howran. The Azura tribe elder, who had been sullen for a long time, felt a sense of relief. Yu Yuan was speechless. However, on second thought, he felt that Xiala's words made sense. If the frigid snow bear wasn't afraid and dared to take all the losses, then Gu Shinkue would have to take a step back. If he didn't, then this mouth of the frigid abyss would be destroyed, and this frigid star zone would explode. Howran's 7 mouths of the frigid abyss would lose one forever. For the sake of Howran's stability, the 5 supreme experts would have to build a new mouth of the frigid abyss. Even the Shunhun sect and the Tongtian Trading Company would have to think of a way to deal with this. Violent bear, Yu Yuan closed his eyes and smelled its violent supernatural ability from the depths of the sea. He also suddenly remembered the hail, snow, and cold lightning it had created above the full spirit realm. It had caused the trees and flowers in the full spirit realm to explode. As it turned out, this seemingly simple-minded snow bear was only so kind when it was with him. It was very unbridled, venting to its heart's content under the sea. The terrifying movements it had created, the endless cold light, icicles and storms, were all refined from the cold energy of this world and the Firefly Star Zone. Just as he expected, this battle lasted for a while and ended with the disappearance of the Howran Gaia. On the other side of the mouth of the frigid abyss, Gu Shinkue seemed to know that if this battle continued, even if he won, he wouldn't get anything. What he would get was the collapse of this world or the frigid snow bear being severely injured again. But he would also lose the mouth of the frigid abyss. Finally, the turbulent undersea world slowly regained its tranquility. The frigid snow bear was under the sea. It restrained its violent and ferocious side. When it emerged again, it was honest and cute again. It even laughed proudly at Yu Yuan. It seemed to be saying that it was careless that it was injured earlier. It didn't expect that Gu Shinkue on the other side would dare to sneak attack it. Amazing! Yu Yuan gave it a thumbs up and sincerely praised it. But in his heart, he was extremely shocked. In the boundless universe, how many people would dare to provoke the Howran Gaia and make Gu Shinkue take a step back? Hanch in his previous life and Yu Yuan in this life were both under Gu Shinkue's shadow. For the time being, this was really the case. He had to admit it. A snow bear, because it was not afraid of anything, dared to give up everything, and used the mouth of the frigid abyss as a bet to make Gu Shinkue take a step back. The thick white cold fog dissipated from the surface of the sea. Through the vision of the dragon beheading platform, Yu Yuan saw that the sea of stars in the outside world was slowly changing again. This meant that the Howran Gaia, Gu Shinkue, had withdrawn all his sword energy. The cold stars flowed freely and slowly floated in the Firefly Star Zone. However, there was no more cold energy pouring into this world from the starry sky of the Firefly Star Zone. Naturally, it would not flow into the deep sea. The frigid snow bears venting under the sea not only made Gu Shinkue take a step back, It also temporarily stopped the cold energy of this world from seeping into the mouth of the frigid abyss. The mouth of the frigid abyss should be blocked. This seemed to be its revenge against Gu Shinkue. It wanted Gu Shinkue to understand the consequences of provoking it. Thank you. Shiara descended from the sky and landed below the frigid snow bear's neck so that it could see him when it lowered its head. This Azura elder who carried a dark cold well had a respectful expression. He used their unique etiquette to bow to the frigid snow bear to show his respect. With your master's strength, he can go anywhere in the world. Chen Qinyan respected him very much. Although he was unwilling, he still kept his mouth shut after hearing his words. Everyone. Chao Jiazi frowned as he noticed something fishy. His gaze stopped on Du Yuan's face. We're going to the Firefly Star Zone to take care of something. Du Yuan's expression was slightly serious. Our sword sect has already informed your sect master of the reason. The Firefly Star Zone is indeed a forbidden area, but we have a reason to go this time. Don't worry. We've received permission. The Firefly Star Zone? The people who hadn't gone to the Xilin Star Zone exclaimed when they heard this name. Obviously, they all knew that the Firefly Star Zone controlled by the Azura race was a forbidden area defined by the three exalted sects, the Devil's Palace and the Goblin Temple. They knew that it was no small matter. The Sword Sect, led by Du Yuan and Yu Mu, two enlightened sword immortals, were going to the Firefly Star Zone together. Something must be wrong. Take care. Chao Jiazi clasped his hands. He wasn't stupid. He knew that something must have happened in the Firefly Star Zone. Otherwise, Du Yuan and Yu Mu wouldn't be in such a hurry to enter that forbidden area. Chen Qinyan, who had been ordered to stay, suddenly became nervous when she heard that they were going to the Firefly Star Zone. She instinctively felt that something was wrong. In a foreign land where snow was falling and cold wind was blowing, most of the frigid snow bear's body had sunk into the deep sea. Only its giant head was above the surface. The cold energy of the entire world, the snow mountains, the ice plains, and the cold energy of the wilderness were gathering toward it. They seeped into its body and veins and helped it recover its strength. Right now, it didn't need Xiala's Dark Realm Cold Well to boost its strength. Its injuries and the energy it had used in its battle with Gu Shinkue were quickly returning to its body through this world and the Firefly Star Zone. Yu Yuan, on the other hand, was sweating profusely as he sat on the dragon platform. His body was like a piece of burning iron. He held a fiery crystal in his hand and kept refining blazing fire energy. He urged the Nine Lights heavenly wheel to gather power into his yellow court acupoint. This was because the Yang spirit in his blood aura lesser world was about to materialize. The Yang spirit was the same size and appearance as his true body, but it contained shocking blood energy. Its body was as red as a fire crystal. At this moment, it was floating in his small world of qi and blood, floating in the thick blood mist. From time to time, a turbid crystal would fly out of it. Crystals were formed from the filth of the Yang spirit's body. As soon as the crystals of different sizes flew out of the Yang spirit's body, his blood aura lesser world trembled slightly. At this time, Yu Yuan focused his mind and immediately sent the filthy crystals out of his acupoint. He first used the fiend body refining art to melt and refine the strange energy and foreign dregs inside. After refining them, he used them to temper his muscles and bones. During this time, there were tiny crystals that the fiend body refining art couldn't melt or crush. They were left behind in his yellow court acupoints. His yellow court acupoints seemed to have become a furnace of fire that helped him cleanse the filth. The Yang spirit's transformation had reached the end stage. The extremely special Yang spirit formed from many rare materials began to remove the dregs and filth. The transformation process was also a critical stage for him to break through from the Soul Wander realm to the Yang spirit realm. Only the Soul Wander realm, about to break through and transform into a yang spirit. Landing above the dark domain cold well, Xiala finally realized why Yu Yuan was acting strangely. Yu Yuan was breaking through to the next realm. She watched from afar, deep in thought, her expression uncertain. With the existence of the dark domain cold well, she, who had been reminded by Yu Yuan, secretly learned about Yu Yuan's past. Thus, she knew that this comet-like, dazzling and miraculous kid in Howran was indeed not simple. He had lived 2 lives. In his previous life, he was actually that god-level alchemist who cultivated poison. Xiala also knew that the Star Frost soared from 300 years ago, and Yu Yuan, who was originally a god-level alchemist, had an emotional entanglement in the Howran world. It seemed that the Star Frost sword Ji Ningxuang was one-sidedly infatuated with him. He has the memories of 2 lives, controls the dragon beheading platform, and even obtained Nie Qingtian's sword Dao. In addition, he is highly regarded by the Shunhun sect and cultivates a secret soul refining technique. Xiala was very shocked. She felt that Yu Yuan, who was in the midst of a breakthrough, would be a great threat to the Shura clan in the future. Her eyes gradually became as cold as ice, flashing with a fierce and cold light. However, every time she discovered that the violent bear was actually paying attention to Yu Yuan, she did not dare to act rashly. Woo! Woo woo! The snow bear let out a beastly roar that was neither loud nor soft. It seemed to be very impatient, as if it was urging something. Xiala was stunned, and then she looked pitifully at the frigid snow bear. The snow bear let out 2 more low growls. This Shura clan elder sighed and could only helplessly control the dark domain cold well to leave this world. She did not dare to disobey. If the violent bear told her to leave, she did not dare to not leave. The malicious thoughts that had appeared in her mind before, wanting to attack Yu Yuan, naturally came to an end. "I'll wait outside. If you need anything, contact me at any time." Before flying out of the world wall, Xiala left behind these words. The frigid snow bear turned a deaf ear. After she disappeared, Yu Yuan's figure was reflected in the enormous beast's eyes. Looking at Yu Yuan, it clearly seemed to be somewhat distressed, as if it knew that Yu Yuan's breakthrough had encountered some trouble. It was thinking of a way to help Yu Yuan. After a while, its eyes suddenly lit up, and a smile seemed to appear on its furry face. Chapter 13:27. The Firefly Star region was the closest shattered star to the River of Sword Lights. Many Azura race battleships were docked on the desolate icy plains. There were also many collapsed stone palaces and broken stone walls that were full of mottled traces of time. A tall figure stood on top of a relatively well-preserved tower, Alonso. The handsome and slightly feminine Alonso was the chief commander of the Azura race. He was a rank 10 bloodline warrior. He wasn't from the Dark Realm. He was a new generation Azura after the Azura race had spread out. He hadn't reached rank 10 bloodline for long. He still had a lot of life left, so he wasn't in a hurry. Right now, he was standing on top of the sharp stone tower in a snow-white cloak and staring blankly at the River of Sword Lights not far away. He was looking at the traces left behind by Nie Qingtian. A human expert wouldn't die of natural causes once they reached the primordial spirit realm. Therefore, Nie Qingtian had lived longer than him, and had existed for much longer than him. As the Shura race's supreme commander, he could only be considered a latecomer. He had never truly come into contact with the heaven-raising sword. So powerful! After so long, the sword energy and sword intent are still so terrifying. Alonso sighed with emotion. Suddenly, he saw Damien, who was holding the blood-boiling war drum, flying over from the distant plains of ice. On the icy plains, many rank 8 and rank 7 Azura warriors were looking a little impatient. "Chief Commander!" Damien bowed respectfully when he arrived. Then, he said, "Shirala sent a message to my king and told him some news she just learned. The news came from Yu Yuan of the human race. He and the undying bird entered the dark forest star region from the shadow illusion star region. The two of them appeared and disappeared together. They are very close. Alonso nodded, indicating that he didn't need to beat around the bush and to get to the point. Shirala, who carried a dark realm cold well, could report to Sabonis of the Azura race and communicate with him, no matter where she was. Damien, on the other hand, was a native Azura of the Dark Realm. He was deeply trusted and valued by Sabonis. Since he had the blood-boiling war drum, he could use it to listen to Sabonis's instructions. The battle in the Jilin star domain came to an end. Wild Bear was injured by the sword sex Halrangaya at the mouth of the cold abyss. However, Wild Bear was treated by Yu Yuan. After recovering, he counterattacked. Our people are still chasing after Starfrost Sword Jining Shuang. Xiala received news that the female Great Sword Immortal has a close relationship with Yu Yuan. Also, Yu Yuan is currently refining his sun spirit, and Violent Bear seems to be taking care of him and chasing Shirala away. Damien could not communicate with Shirala directly. The two of them had to go through the Dark Domain and the Shura of Gojoseon and Sabonis. Sabonis was the one who carried the Dark Domain Cold Well and the Quasi-Saint weapon, the blood-boiling war drum, as well as the sea of information of high-level platinum Azuras. Damien, who came from the Dark Realm, reported the news he had just received in detail. Alonso listened attentively and nodded repeatedly. A while later, he said, "What does the chief mean?" The chief said that since we can't find anything in the Jilin star domain, the god of the origin realm has disappeared, and the void spirit and the fallen divine tree have left. You don't have to stay in the Firefly star domain for long. Damien lowered his head and said, "As for the Starfrost sword and Yu Yuan of the human race, you can deal with them as you see fit. That person called Yu Yuan is Fernand's benefactor. She even saved Elena's life. Sigh, it's a pity that he's Nye Qingtian's successor." As Alonso spoke, he looked at the interweaving river of sword light with a complicated look in his eyes. He was the chief commander of the Azura race, and he was responsible for mobilizing the armies to fight the human race and other foreign races. In the past, Fernand was his most capable assistant and trusted confidant of Alonso. He had met Elena when she was young. He had determined that Elena's talent was extraordinary, and that she had a chance to surpass Fernand and become a Azura warrior of the Dark Realm. Elena hadn't let him down. Not only had her bloodline reached rank 8, but she had also officially entered the Dark Realm to temper herself. Xiala thinks that Yu Yuan will be a great threat to us in the future. He has received Nye Qingtian's inheritance and wields the terrifying dragon beheading platform. Even now, he hasn't ascended to the Yang spirit realm, Damien said with his head bowed. Fool. Alonso shook his head and snorted coldly. Damien didn't dare to retort. He kept his head down and his eyebrows down. That kid has won the immortal bird's trust. You said it yourself that the immortal bird was always with him in the domain of illusions. Alonso's expression darkened slightly. Let's put aside the conflict between the Shinhun sect and the chief for now. We shouldn't make too much noise during this time. If the god of the origin realm is truly so mysterious and terrifying, let's figure out his background first. I'll do as you say. Boom. The frigid realm snow bear, which was as sturdy as a mountain, suddenly penetrated the realm barrier and charged out of the frozen heaven and earth. Even though it was almost 2,000 meters tall, it was as insignificant as a speck of dust compared to the star surrounded by thick frost mist. However, after it appeared, it seemed to have activated its bloodline as it faced the river of sword light. The fine bloodline crystal chains under its skin suddenly started to shine brightly. It was as if the laws of frost had been rearranged and started to display their wonders. Xiala, who was standing guard outside, couldn't help but exclaim softly when he sensed the changes in its flesh aura. Then, Xiala stared at it without blinking. However, she discovered that it was staring at the distant rivers of dazzling light. Those wondrous fireflies seemed to have been summoned by its bloodline. Shiala went blank for a long time before her pupils shrank, and she let out an exclamation. Thousands of kilometers away, the dazzling wonders of the domain of fireflies were wreathed in frigid auras. The rivers of dazzling light that Shura of Gojoseon had ordered the Asuras not to approach seemed to be moving slowly. It was as if the rivers of dazzling light were flowing towards a deep sea. Over here. No matter how slow Shiala was, she would have figured out what was going on if she paid more attention. The rivers of sword light that had been motionless since she had learned about them were slowly moving towards them from the other side. She didn't know if it was because of the vibrations of the wild bear's bloodline, or if it was because of the frost power that surrounded them, or because the rivers of sword light themselves had been activated, but the dazzling rivers of sword light were slowly moving towards them from the other side. The reason why she seemed to be moving slowly was because the other side was extremely far away from her. She had a feeling that the rivers of sword light were moving at an extremely fast speed. Wild Bear thumped its chest and stamped its feet in excitement. A proud smile appeared on its face. It seemed to think that it was an incredible and noble thing to be able to use its bloodline to control the frigid mist and the rivers of sword light within it. Grand Commander! On the desolate icy plain, the Azura warriors near the warships cried out. Damien and the two platinum Azuras were also standing on top of the icy plain. They looked at Alonso, who was standing on top of the steeple, and told him what they were thinking. What they didn't know was that Alonso was even more shocked than they were at this moment. After all, Alonso knew what kind of terrifying sword power the rivers of sword light contained, how they had been formed, and why they had never dissipated. The rivers of sword light that had remained motionless since they had been formed suddenly moved. Of course he was shocked to the core. Boom! Along the way, the interweaving river of sword light came into contact with a dead star that wasn't far from them, and instantly caused it to collapse and shatter. They turned into tiny meteors that filled the sky and floated in midair. On the other side of the starry river, in the field of fireflies, a sword light trailed behind it, easily breaking away from the pincer attack of the three platinum Azuras. In the blink of an eye, it was 500 kilometers away. Jining Shuang's expression flickered as she stood on top of a shattered warship with her sword in hand. She was surprised to see that the strange fireflies that were originally enveloped in frigid mist were emanating sword intent that could destroy heaven and earth. This sword intent only existed in the sword sect's secret scriptures. That person was a taboo even in the sword sect. No one was allowed to mention him. I can't believe his sword intent and sword power actually existed in the field of fireflies. After recovering from her shock, Jining Shuang suddenly understood why Yu Yuan had appeared in the Azura race's starry river and why he had taken such a risk. Chapter 1328. As a great sword deity of the sword sect, Jining Shuang, who came later, didn't know much about the inside story because she was too young. For a great sword deity who could live for thousands of years or even eternally, Jining Shuang, who was only 300 years old, was just a little girl who had just started to understand things. Besides, the story of the Sword of the Mighty Sky and its glorious achievements was gradually revealed because the Shenhun sect showed up, the three high sects, the Devil's Palace, and the Goblin Temple could no longer be kept a secret. Jining Shuang also learned that before Gu Xinkue, the Sword of the Earth, there had been an amazing genius in the sword sect. The energy of the Sword of the Mighty Sky. Looking at the sword from afar, she grabbed the hilt of the Sword of Star Frost with her fingers and tried to sense the profound sword will in the river of sword aura from afar. Swoosh! Swoosh! A kind of suppression from the Tao of the sword was born from the flowing rivers of sword light. It actually caused her Starfrost sword to tremble, causing many of the pure sword lights to explode. Jining Shuang's expression froze. She keenly sensed that the river of sword aura formed by Nye Qingtian seemed to be very hostile to her, a junior of the sword sect. Why? She was somewhat surprised and unsure, so she secretly tested it 2 more times. Then, her mood worsened. She knew that it was not an illusion. The river of sword aura hanging in the Firefly space zone might be full of malice to her, and even to all the successors of the sword sect. What happened back then? After so long, he has died. Why is he still unwilling to forgive the sword sect? Jining Shuang pondered in silence. Suddenly, she remembered that the Firefly space zone was designated as a forbidden area, and the 5 supreme cultivators were not allowed to hunt in this space zone. Was it because of the river of sword aura? She decided to find out the truth. On the surface of the planet surrounded by cold mist. With a bitter face, Shirala reported to the Shura of Gojosian Sabonis through the dark domain cold well. They were going to tell their king that something shocking was happening in the Firefly space zone at this moment. She was also sneaking glances at the frigid domain snow bear with a cautious expression, afraid that she would be noticed. However, she soon realized that she was thinking too much. He rushed out of the frigid world below and used his magical bloodline to locate the coordinates of the frigid snow bear. When he saw the river of sword auras flying over, he returned in satisfaction. The moment it returned, it seemed to form a bridge with the river of sword light that was hidden in the depths of the frigid abyss. The moving absolute frost star also took the initiative to move closer to the interweaving river of sword light. Both sides were moving together, and their speeds were still increasing. This made Shirala believe that it would not be long before the 2 strange objects in this part of the starry sky would converge at some point. She hurriedly went to consult the Shura of Gojosian. At the border of the starry river, Yu Yuan, Xiao Yuling, and the frigid domain snow bear had met. The sword sect cultivators led by Du Yuan and Yu Mu crossed the illusory Xilin space zone and officially entered the Shura race's Firefly space zone. The moment they entered, the expressions of the Yang spirit realm sword sect cultivators suddenly changed. For some reason, they all felt an invisible force pressing down on their long swords that were connected to their mind. The sword incantations and sword power they had comprehended seemed to be weakened. Even though they had not actually swung their swords to fight. Yu Mu, who was known as the Sword of Heavenly Water, shuddered slightly, and his eyes shone with shocking light. Looking at the distant starry sky, he suddenly said, I seem to. Like Jining Shuang, he, who was in the Freedom Realm, also sensed the extraordinary aura in the river of sword light. The Sword of Heaven. Yu Mu took a deep breath and shouted these words without any surprise. He stared at Du Yuan with burning eyes, waiting for an explanation. Sighed. Du Yuan, who knew the inside story, sighed. Remember, we entered the Firefly space zone to help her. Also, we need to see why the mouth of the frigid abyss is blocked, and then find a way to clear it. The mouth of the frigid abyss? Yu Mu's heart trembled. He had sensed the sword intent of the Sword of Heaven, but not the mouth of the frigid abyss. Du Yuan's words shocked Yu Mu even more. He finally realized that there was a reason why the sect had designated the Firefly space zone as a forbidden area. Yes, the reason the Firefly space zone is listed as a forbidden area is because the mouth of the frigid abyss is here. Du Yuan had to explain. The mouth of the frigid abyss is very important. We can't afford to lose it. Yu Mu nodded in understanding, not daring to question Zhang Xian anymore. As for the other weaker Yang spirit cultivators, they were at a loss. They didn't even know what the mouth of the frigid abyss was. They also didn't know the source of the pressure and discomfort they felt with their sword Dao and sword power. They were still wondering if the mouth of the frigid abyss was something special. Inside the absolute frost heaven and earth, Yu Yuan, who looked like a cooked prawn, was sitting on the dragon beheading platform in the lotus position, washing and refining the dirt that had spilled out of his Yang spirit. He couldn't get the dirt out of his body directly. He had to melt it with his own body. It seemed that this was the only way his true form and his yang spirit would be able to merge seamlessly. Therefore, he had no choice but to start the first round of refinement with the fiend body refining incantation. He would take the dirt that he couldn't crush and melt to his golden hall acupoints, where he would start the second round of refinement with the blazing flame power of the 9 lights heavenly wheel. Gradually, he had a bad feeling that his chi cultivation was going to go berserk. From time to time, he could see powerful outsiders fighting. He felt as if he had become a warrior of the dark spirits, a sage of the star spirits, a leader of the demonesses, and a general of the silver scales. It was as if the profound memories contained in the drops of outsider blood essence he had obtained in the forbidden area of the falling moon forbidden land were dissipating during the refinement process. They were dissipating in his body, soul, and subconscious. Whoosh! The scabbard of his heaven-toppling sword suddenly flew out of his ring of cosmos and floated over his head. Irritated, he looked at the scabbard, which had lost its sword soul, and seemed to have been triggered by some kind of power, and felt uneasy. In the next moment, he saw the frigid realm snow bear giggling at him. The bear's giggle seemed to have some kind of magical power that made him feel at ease. As the bear giggled, wisps of frigid mist rose from the sky and the sea below, as if they were being channeled by the frigid realm snow bear, the ruler of this world, to envelop him. Soon, Yu Yuan discovered, to his surprise, that he seemed to have become a star. Cold mist swirled around his body. Waves of cold energy, which made him wise and calm, were formed again and again, rippling gently. The signs that he was about to go berserk were instantly alleviated, and his mind was no longer in chaos. However, the sword marks on the bones of his arms were rapidly heating up. Chapter 13:29. The sword mark was still there, but the sword soul had long since left. Back in the thousand-bird realm, the sword soul had taken the opportunity to step into the dark realm and merge with the heaven-toppling sword. It was also because the sword soul and the divine sword had merged, and Sabonis happened to be unable to split himself, that the divine sword had been able to break through the seal of the dark realm and obtain great freedom. After losing the sword soul, the deep mark on his arm only had a little bit of sword intent left. Sword intent. Yu Yuan's mind stirred slightly. He immediately knew why the scabbard had flown out of the ring of cosmos, and the sword mark on his arm bone was burning hot. He looked at the frigid snow bear again, and separated a wisp of soul consciousness to communicate with the dragon-slaying platform. The dragon-slaying platform was like a wisdom eye that had been strengthened thousands of times, illuminating the stars and scenes outside the star he was on. He was able to see the gloomy and impatient Shiala. Shiala used the dark realm cold well to send wisps of her flesh and blood to the bottom of the well. She seemed to be communicating with the Shura of Gojoseon in the dark realm and urgently reporting something. Yu Yuan noticed that she kept looking in a certain direction. With a thought, Yu Yuan followed Shiala's gaze and stared in the direction the Platinum Azura warrior was looking at. Because of that, he was able to see the incomparably dazzling and rapidly moving river of sword lights. Thus, it confirmed the guess in his heart just now. The strange movement of the scabbard and the burning of his arm bone were because the eternal and indestructible river of sword light left behind by Nye Qintian was approaching him. The star he was on was also flying and taking the initiative to move closer. If nothing unexpected happened, the vast and magnificent river of sword light would eventually meet the star he was on. In the depths of the river of sword light, the heaven-toppling sword's sword intent was hidden. The scabbard and the sword mark on his arm bone also had a faint sword intent. The two of them came from the same sect, and for some reason, they resonated with each other, which was why the scabbard flew out of its own accord. The sword mark on his arm bone also sensed it. "Ha ha! Violent bear, who was as majestic as a snow-capped mountain, laughed foolishly as if he was asking for credit. That posture clearly told him that the arrival of the long river of sword light was due to it. Yu Yuan was deeply shocked. Then, he began to think again. How long had this mysterious, frigid snow bear lived? When he was in the domain of dark forest, he felt a sense of familiarity with the frigid snow bear, but he didn't have any deep memories of it. This meant that he must have had contact with the frigid snow bear in his first life. However, at that time, he might have stood at the peak of the galaxy, suppressed all living things, and had a transcendent status. As for this snow bear, its strength and status at that time should be far inferior to his, so it was not valued by him. However, the him in his first life must have already stepped into the ultimate primordial spirit realm and possessed eternal life. It was impossible for him to die naturally. How many years had it been since his previous life? Tens of thousands of years. According to Chun Ching Huang and Beirut, only the primordial spirits of the human race, the great demon gods of the celestial demons, and the giant beasts of the starry sky were blessed with eternal life. The Howran demons, the strange beasts of the outer realms, and the ultimate warriors of each race would still die of old age one day. However, this snow bear was still alive and kicking after tens of thousands of years. It showed no signs of dying. After his first life, it had experienced Nye Qingtian's glorious era. It had also used a strange cold mist to surround the long river of sword light and supported the Azura race. Its traces had passed through several generations of the Shura of Gojoseon. Yu Yuan couldn't help but take a deep breath. Roar! It growled and pointed at Yu Yuan's chest, and then at Yu Yuan's yellow court microcosm, as if to say, "Don't be distracted, continue to refine yourself. The main body of the sun god's soul is my Selim soul." The Selim soul first cultivated the extreme wisdom soul tempering art. However, the creation of the body was mixed with too much strange blood. Yu Yuan pondered. Surrounded by the cold mist, he no longer had illusions. The signs of qi deviation had disappeared without a trace. He thought about how, after entering this world of absolute cold with the frigid abyss mouth, he would have a flash of inspiration every time he thought about something. He felt very calm. He believed that this place was good for cultivating the mind and had a calming effect on the soul. Did the snow bear bring him here because it knew that his sun god was about to transform? It also felt that the biggest problem he would encounter might be qi deviation. It was the imbalance of all kinds of power and then losing control? The extreme wisdom soul tempering art could refine the Selim soul, clear the mind, and improve wisdom. However, his new sun god's main body was the life altar, and it had also merged with the great demon god Grek's blood-colored crystal, drops of blood essence from many rank 9 experts of the foreign races, and many strange beasts, including great demons, that had been devoured and refined. It was too mixed and chaotic. Therefore, when the sun god was formed, before it left the body, many hidden dangers erupted together. Normal human great cultivators would be eroded by their inner demons the moment they advanced to the sun god level, and they would also face the danger of qi deviation. For him, the danger factor increased dozens of times because of the uniqueness of the sun god. Here, the extremely cold world with the frigid abyss mouth can help the sun god form. It can purify the mind and calm the soul? Your existence and the surrounding cold mist have increased the effect by a lot? He looked at the snow bear and said his guess, seeking an answer. Snow bear chuckled happily. Yu Yuan instantly understood. When it met him in the Yulin star zone, it might have seen his situation and knew that he was about to break through. Bringing him here was a decision that it had made a long time ago. Yu Yuan even felt that the Empress was well aware of the trouble he would encounter when his sun god broke through. She also predicted what he would face next. She also knew the frigid snow bear's thoughts and kindness towards him. The reason why she didn't take him with her or invite him to the Darkwing Star Zone was because she knew that he would eventually meet the Snow Bear and be brought here by it to break through. Thank you. After thanking it solemnly, he followed the Snow Bear's advice and ignored the sword scabbard and the abnormal sword marks on his arm for the time being. He once again immersed himself in his breakthrough. Then, he continued to melt and refine the tainted crystals from the sun god. Jining Shuang chose to go to the long river of sword light. Wielding the sword of Starfrost, she easily avoided the attacks of the 3 platinum Azuras like a dazzling shooting star. Her sword aura was like rainbows. Seeing that the long river of sword light was getting closer and closer to her, the pressure on her increased exponentially. In the long river of sword light that could crush stars as it moved in a place she couldn't see with the naked eye, there were billions of tiny sword lights that seemed to be circulating on their own for eternity. As she approached, the sword of Starfrost that she had comprehended and practiced seemed to activate something. Soon after, there were a few dazzling long rivers of sword light, and the sword light within them trembled slightly. Immeasurable and mysterious sword might press down on her from afar. The sword soul in the sword of Starfrost let out a panicked sword cry. Jining Shuang's approaching figure suddenly trembled, and the frost at the corner of her clothes was extinguished. She suddenly felt very sad. The sword sect had stood tall in Howren for so many years, and was respected by countless people. The sword sect's heaven-piercing sword, which was a miraculous river of sword light, didn't exist in the starry river of the sword sect, but in the domain of Firefly, the Azura's domain. Generations of descendants of the sword sect were still restricted by the rules of this forbidden land, and weren't allowed to set foot in this place. They couldn't see this wondrous scene with their own eyes, and couldn't get close to the profound Tao of the sword contained in the river of sword light, so they couldn't imagine how magnificent the great sword immortal of the past had been. She, on the other hand, had ignored the rules of this forbidden land and forced her way in. As she approached the river of sword light, she was suppressed in every way. How did it become like this? She sighed, feeling regretful and sad for the grudge between Ye Qingtian, who was probably the strongest sword immortal in the history of the sword sect, and the sect, Jining Shuang, the sword of Starfrost. Suddenly, she saw a handsome Azura man with a feminine aura appear on one of the star fragments adjacent to the river of sword light. Alonso! Jining Shuang snorted softly. On the way here, she had learned from Qiao Yuling that this Azura chief commander was currently in charge of the domain of Firefly. Now that she had suddenly encountered it, she did not show any fear. Her slender figure hovered above the Starfrost sword. She did not care about the 3 platinum Azuras behind her as she coldly said, "You Azuras actually preserved the item left behind by my sword sect's ancestors and allowed it to grow stronger." What? Using this method to warn the descendants of the Azura clan, to tell your descendants what kind of humiliation you have suffered in the past? She sneered rudely. Humiliation? Alonso laughed in surprise. He waved his hand, signaling for the furious Damien to shut up and for the other 3 platinum Azuras to calm down. Do you really think he left these rivers of sword light after he killed the Azuras? Alonso asked with a smile. Jining Shuang raised her eyebrows. Isn't he? No. Alonso shook his head. His snow-white teeth made him look both sunny and healthy. He didn't look at all like the chief commander of the Azura army, which was one of the most powerful forces in the Outer Realms. These rivers of sword light were left behind by his battle against human experts and powerful demons in Howren. Alonso laughed. Aside from the fact that the frigid abyss is here and the domain of Firefly is considered a forbidden area by you, there's another important reason. These rivers of sword light are also filled with malice towards the people of the sword sect, the Xuantianzong sect, the Primal Yang sect, the Devil's Palace, and the Goblin Temple. The rivers of sword light repel the people of Howren. They naturally suppress your auras. Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny? The more Alonso spoke, the louder his laughter became, and the more excited he became. Why don't we defeat them? Why do we keep them and let them grow stronger? Because they aren't a humiliation to us Asuras. Their existence has always been a humiliation to you, and they will forever keep you in check. Chapter 1330. The general of the Azura race smiled brightly as he explained the reason for the river of sword light. As he spoke, sharp spikes grew from his knees, elbows, and shoulders like slender swords. They shone with dazzling golden light. A rank 10 Azura warrior was also called a golden Azura. Sabonis was one, and so was Alonso. After he activated his bloodline, his spikes turned golden. Then, his bones, blood, and skin seemed to undergo an astounding transformation in a short time. At the same time, his feminine temperament also completely disappeared. Now he was showing off his abilities. It was like a golden spear piercing into the starry sky, sharp to the extreme. ZZZT. As his bloodline boiled, a large number of golden and silver lines appeared in the space around Jiningshuang. The golden and silver lines contained Alonso's presence and resonated with his bloodline. When all the golden and silver lines appeared, Jiningshuang realized that it was an enormous cage. The cage wrapped around her and the sword of Starfrost, making it difficult for her to escape. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh! The 3 platinum Azuras who had been ordered by Alonso to stop in the distance immediately flew over after receiving permission. 2 men and 1 woman looked at the old platinum Azura and bowed to Alonso. "Greetings, General." Alonso nodded with a smile. The female among the 3 was even more muscular than the male Shura warriors. Many of the platinum spikes on her shoulders and elbows had broken. Clearly, it was thanks to Jiningshuang. She was the most seriously injured, but when she found Jiningshuang and the sword of Starfrost in the cage, her anger was vented. "Commander, this great sword Immortal's combat strength is probably not weaker than Du Yuan's." The woman called Lola was tall and strong. Her voice was rough and hoarse. "We have to kill her as much as possible, because if she becomes a great sword immortal at the primordial soul stage, her combat power in the outer realm will definitely surpass Gu Xingkue's." The other 2 male rank 9 Azuras also agreed, saying that Jiningshuang's battle prowess was terrifying. Alonso smiled and nodded. "I know what to do." Whoosh! Whoosh! Beams of dazzling sword light shot out one after another like the Milky Way. Countless cold crystals shot out dazzling divine light from the sword light like many icy stars. When the streaks of sword light pierced through the gaps in the gold and silver cage, the cage suddenly emitted a blinding gold and silver light. The sword light of the Starfrost sword was actually unable to break through the golden and silver light, unable to penetrate the cage and extend outwards. Jiningshuang narrowed her eyes and released her soul remembrance. However, it also hit a wall with a chi-chi sound. It was blocked by the radiance of the earth cage and was unable to leave. Her expression was slightly solemn. She was not in a hurry to swing her sword again. Instead, she was thinking calmly. "Sui Luo cage?" After a while, she had an answer in her heart, so she asked in a low voice. As expected, Alonso nodded with a smile. "As expected of the Starfrost sword. You're indeed smart. You guessed it right. I won't go into detail about the materials used to weave and create this magical cage. I'll only tell you one thing. The Azura of our race was also called Sui Luo in ancient times. This cage was made with great effort to capture and kill a kind of creature in Howran. Guess what kind of creature it is?" Alonso asked in a leisurely manner. Jiningshuang snorted coldly. "The dragon race." "That's right. The dragon race that has fallen from their divine altar and is no longer a threat." Alonso's expression was solemn. "You should know that before the rise of the human race, the dragon race often rushed out of Howran and ran amok in the vast sea of stars. In order to deal with those damnable dragons, the intelligent races in outer space had done everything they could. My race's Sui Luo cage is a true holy artifact. It can even restrain a rank 10 dragon god. Not to mention Jining Shuang. Alonso smiled with narrowed eyes. From the moment the river of sword lights had started to move, and when Jining Shuang's star frost sword had suddenly flown over, he had secretly released the Sui Luo cage and waited for Jining Shuang to walk into the trap. Now, he had achieved his goal. "Commander, why did you only trap her and not kill her immediately?" Damien asked in a low voice. "Because other than her, the Sword of Destruction, Du Yuan, and the Sword of Heavenly Water, Yu Mu, have also entered the Firefly Star Zone." Alonso laughed and looked into the distance. "I will let them see that Jining Shuang has been imprisoned by the Sui Luo cage, and let them come one by one." The moment he said this, the Azura race experts present let out thunderous roars. The flames of war burned fiercely in the eyes of the 5 rank 9 Platinum Azura. Shura, who was not afraid of death, had heard Alonso's true intentions from his words. How could he not be excited? All of you must remember that these numerous streams of sword light are capable of naturally suppressing the experts of the sword sect. Not to mention Du Yuan and Yu Mu, even if Gu Xingkue were to come in person, his strength would be weakened. Alonso's voice grew cold. Du Yuan and Yu Mu will give up on searching for the star where the entrance to the frigid abyss is because she has been trapped by the Sui Luo cage. Instead, they will risk their lives and come to the place where the river of sword lights is. In this place, the power of their sword arts, and sword intent will be suppressed. This is the tomb I prepared for them. Above the cold, misty realm. A smile appeared at the corner of Xiala's mouth. After she learned that Jining Shuang had been trapped through Dark Realm Coldwell, she felt that the wounds caused by the Sword of Starfrost had become medals of victory. The Sui Luo cage was not something that Damien's Boiling Blood War Drum could compare to. The Boiling Blood War Drum was only a quasi-saint artifact, but the Sui Luo cage was a true saint artifact. In the legends of their race, only rank 10 Gold Azura had the ability and qualifications to control this artifact. Even a native Platinum Azura of Dark Realm like Damien would not be able to unleash the true power of the Sui Luo cage if they obtained it. This was because it required the blood of a rank 10 Gold Azura to activate the wonders of this saint artifact. No matter how powerful Jining Shuang was, she had not cultivated a nascent spirit, and the Sword of Starfrost was not a divine-grade artifact. After she was trapped in the Sui Luo cage, she had no chance of breaking free from Alonso, 5 rank 9 Platinum Azura, and many rank 8 and rank 7 warriors. You're the one who wants to die. You can't blame anyone else. There's a reason why the Firefly Star Zone is listed as a forbidden area. Shirala muttered with a smile. Suddenly, her smile froze. This was because she saw a sword scabbard appear out of nowhere, causing her body and the dark domain cold well that she was carrying to feel threatened. A shocking sword intent came from the bottom of the scabbard, as if it was communicating with the river of sword light in the distance. A terrifying sword energy descended from the sky and landed on top of her head. Then she saw a soul shadow appear above the scabbard. Yu Yuan. Why you dare to appear in the sky of the Firefly Star Zone as a Een soul? Shirala screamed. She was angry and felt insulted. Why don't you stay in there? Do you want to target me with a scabbard? Is the Sword of Starfrost trapped by the Azura race's saint artifact? Yu Yuan asked in a low voice. His true body was still sitting on the dragon beheading platform, tempering his young soul in the absolute frost world below. Through the dragon beheading platform, he saw the Sword of Starfrost flash for a moment in the river of sword light in the distance, then suddenly dim. Worried, he tried to use the scabbard to protect his Een soul and leave the absolute frost world. He was surprised to find that the sword intent hidden in the scabbard in the Firefly Star Zone seemed to be strengthened by the river of sword light, and his own soul did not fear the impact of the power of the stars. However, when his own soul and the scabbard appeared in the sky, he could not see anything. The dragon beheading platform gave him a better view. However, he happened to hear Xiala's words and knew that Jining Shuang was in trouble. She's trapped in the Sui Luo cage. She's dead for sure. Chapter 1331. Xiala did not disguise the hatred and pleasure in her eyes. She had encountered the Sword of Starfrost on her way here and was injured by Jining Shuang. Fortunately, she had entered the cold world below and escaped Jining Shuang's pursuit. Her injuries had healed. Of course, she did not want Jining Shuang to have an easy time. Also, the power of Jining Shuang's swordsmanship was even fiercer than what the Azura race had recorded. This made her feel even more uneasy. She was afraid that another world-shaking sword immortal like Nye Qingtian would appear in the sword sect. The Sword of Earth, Gu Xingkue, had holed himself up in Howran for many years. In the past, his swordsmanship had not been too shocking, so Xiala was not afraid of him. What she was afraid of was the legendary Sword of Heaven. Based on the aura emanating from the river of sword lights alone, she could tell how terrifying Nye Qingtian's strength was back then. In her opinion, Jining Shuang had the potential to kill. Plain falling cage? Yu Yuan's own soul, which was standing on the scabbard, was an illusory spirit. However, when he heard Xiala mention this item, his soul's shadow suddenly swayed. He faintly felt that he had heard of the plain falling cage somewhere before and felt slightly uneasy. Soon, he realized that his first life self had memories related to the plain falling cage. In that life, he did not have a deep impression of the frigid snow bear, but he had a deep memory of the plain falling cage. This meant that this item had a great background. As expected, Xiala's expression was cold as she said proudly, "This item is not something the blood-boiling war drum can compare to. The plain falling cage is a true holy artifact. In the distant past, our Azura clan's strongest experts used the plain fall cage to hunt down and kill dragons." When she said this, her expression changed slightly. "It is similar to your dragon beheading platform. What a coincidence." Dragon beheading platform? Yu Yuan's heart tightened. His own spirit that had rushed into the starry sky could not see the scene around the river of sword light. Hence, he connected to the dragon-slaying platform and borrowed its vast vision. Even so, he could only see that there seemed to be small stars revolving around the moving river of sword light. The Azura experts couldn't see the so-called plain landing cage or the light of the Starfrost sword. "Even I can't see it. How could you?" Xiala's face was full of disdain. That Jining Shuang's sword light only shone for a moment before it was trapped by the Supreme Commander's falling cage. "I might as well tell you the truth. Not only Jining Shuang, but also Du Yuan, Yu Mu, and the other young gods of the sword sects who dare to step into the Firefly Space Zone will all die by the river of sword light. Gu Xingkue was the one who attacked Violent Bear at the bottom of the sea. Du Yuan, Yu Mu, and the others charge in behind Fei Ying. What? When our king is injured, do you think we are easy to bully?" Xiala said angrily. Just as Yu Yuan was about to interject, her expression abruptly changed. Through the dragon-slaying platform below, he saw that in the cold starry sky, which was closer to this world of absolute frost, there were long, narrow, and bright sword lights streaking through the sky like shooting stars. He saw the traces of the Sword of Heavenly Water in those sword lights through the dragon-slaying platform and knew that Yu Mu was among them. Combined with Xiala's words, he immediately realized that the Sword of Destruction, Du Yuan, and the Sword of Heavenly Water, Yu Mu, had led many Yang God Realm sword immortals into the Firefly Space Zone after Jining Shuang. This is a bit tricky. Yu Yuan frowned deeply. He knew that since the commander-in-chief of the Azura race, Alonso, was here and had used the Sualua cage to imprison Jining Shuang, he would not let the matter rest. Gu Xingkue of the Sword Sect had attacked the frigid snow bear first, and Jining Shuang had injured Shirala. Du Yuan, Yu Mu, and the others had ignored the restrictions of this forbidden land and rushed in one after another. Wasn't this a slap to the Azura race's face? Alonso was not a pushover. When the Shura of Gojoseon Sabonis was severely injured and forced to retreat into the Dark Realm, he could not admit defeat. Otherwise, the powerful races in the universe would think that the Azura race had declined. They would think that the Azura race had no one they could use. Alonso was determined to get back at the Sword Sect and restore the glory of the Azura race. The river of sword light and the world of absolute frost we are in have been moving closer to each other, Yu Yuan muttered. He wanted to succeed in forging the Sun Spirit as soon as possible. He did not care about the life and death of Du Yuan or even Yu Mu. He only cared about Jining Shuang. What he was thinking was that before the long river of sword light met this world, Du Yuan, Yu Mu, and the young spirit cultivators of the Sword Sect would die. As long as Jining Shuang was fine and alive, he would save her at all costs. They will all die, all of them. The commander-in-chief has taken action. None of the Sword Sect's sword immortals will survive. Shirala laughed strangely. I'll have to trouble you to inform your chief commander to let me see the living Starfrost sword, Yu Yuan suddenly said. You! Shirala glanced at him, shook his head, and said, I don't know why Violent Bear is taking care of you. However, with your identity, status, realm, and combat strength, you are not qualified to ask for anything. As a Platinum Azura who was in charge of a dark domain cold well, Shella looked down on Yu Yuan. She did not know enough about Yu Yuan. Because Yu Yuan had close ties with the Shunhun sect, and Sabonis had been severely injured by the Shunhun sect, and Yu Yuan had cultivated the 9 slashes to the sky, she was even more dissatisfied. In the Illusion Star Zone, it was also because Chao Jiaza and the others were under too much pressure that they had no choice but to temporarily join forces. In her heart, she still regarded the other party as an enemy. She did not know what kind of luck he had to get the favor of Violent Bear. Did he really think that he could do whatever he wanted in the Firefly Star Zone? You even asked me to inform the commander-in-chief. What right do you have, Yu Yuan? Shirala snorted coldly in her heart with a mocking expression on her face. Well, Yu Yuan's Een spirit stood above the scabbard and nodded slightly. For some reason, Shirala suddenly sensed a hint of danger. She looked around and did not find anything unusual. Then she said mockingly, If you were a god-king of the Shunhun sect or a fey god of the Goblin Temple, I would help you pass the message. Unfortunately, you are nothing. You haven't even refined your young spirit. Whoosh! The dragon-slaying platform bathed in white light flew out of the land of absolute frost below and suddenly appeared in front of Shirala. She was stunned. In the next moment, she was surprised to find that Yu Yuan's Een spirit had entered the dragon-slaying platform, and the scabbard with sharp sword intent had sunk into the star below. While she was still confused, the long dragon beheading platform suddenly blossomed with a dazzling light that even she felt dazzled. In a breath's time, it flew right under her nose towards another realm that was wreathed in frigid mist that was the closest to this moving star. That realm was eternally fixed, and there were Azura clansmen living there. What was this kid trying to do? Shirala frowned and felt slightly uneasy. She hurriedly drove the dark realm cold well to chase after him to investigate. There were snowy mountains that were thousands of meters tall in the foreign realm where snow and ice fell. On top of the cold icy plains, there were Azura race cities and villages around them. Many Azura clansmen with bloodline grades of 5, 4, or even lower than that lived and worked in peace here. Suddenly, a strange stone that seemed to be able to split heaven and earth appeared through the realm barrier that was as thin as paper. The moment it appeared, it went to the desolate snowy mountains. Boom! Boom boom boom! Wherever the strange stone passed, the towering snowy mountain would suddenly collapse. All of the Asuras who lived on this starry river cried out in fear as they felt the earth tremble and the snow mountains crumble. Since the domain of Firefly had been listed as a forbidden land by Howran, no humans or powerful demons had come to this realm for tens of thousands of years. That was why most of the Asura clansmen here hadn't been attacked by Howran. They had never imagined that such a disaster would happen to their realm one day. If it weren't for the fact that powerful Asura clansmen could see the enormous stone, they would have thought it was a natural disaster. It wasn't man-made. Whoosh! After driving the dragon beheading platform with his god and easily piercing through another mountain of ice, Yu Yuan's mind changed, and the dragon beheading platform came to a sudden stop. Inside the dragon beheading platform, he looked behind him and saw that the mountain range was already riddled with holes. More than a dozen snowy mountains and icy peaks were destroyed in the blink of an eye. Countless huge rocks and ice fell from the sky, creating craters on the ground. The scene behind him made him feel a little dazed. He thought that it was a good thing that Howran's realm barrier had been unbreakable for tens of thousands of years. Otherwise, if those powerful non-humankind beings were allowed to enter, wouldn't the vast mountains, lakes, and kingdoms in the human world be destroyed in an instant? He had actually restrained himself. In this icy realm, there were 3 cities the size of Silver Moon City. The strongest Asura was only a rank 6 bloodline warrior. If he really did as he pleased and activated the dragon beheading platform's power, those 3 Asura kingdoms would be destroyed with a flick of his finger. It wouldn't take him long to destroy the entire small world, including the glaciers and the wilderness. The reason he was so restrained was because all the Asura clansmen living in the domain of Firefly had listened to Fernand before. In the future, they would be loyal to Elena. Yu Yuan, how dare you! Outside the realm barrier, Shiala's furious roar came from the depths of space. Through the dragon beheading platform's vision, he could clearly see that the Platinum Asura had activated the full power of Dark Domain Cold Well. It was like a cold current. You refuse a toast and insist on drinking a forfeit. The dragon beheading platform stood motionless in the void, silently waiting for Shiala's arrival. Bastard! Do you know what you're doing? After a long while, Shiala brought the Dark Domain Cold Well, and broke through the realm wall, stepping into the interior of the realm. Platinum Asura! It's an Asura of the same rank as Lord Fernand. Heavens! The sharp-eyed Asuras of this world saw Shiala's spikes that looked like they were made of platinum. They immediately guessed her high status and cried out excitedly. Chapter 1332. On the flying sword of destruction, the tip of Du Yuan's eyebrows twitched as he suddenly glanced into the distant starry river. His eyes gradually grew deep, as if they had penetrated the boundless space and landed on a cold star in an instant. Then, he exclaimed softly, "The dragon beheading platform!" Yumu shuddered. What? The sword of destruction and the sword of heavenly water flew side by side. Du Yuan was the only one standing above the sword of destruction. His sleeves fluttered, and his aura was as terrifying as that of a god. The flaming sword auras emanated an aura that could cause all things to wither and die, causing the bloodlines of some of the higher-grade Asuras on the stars along the way to tremble. With Du Yuan's attainments in cultivation, the Tao of the sword he had comprehended in the void could slightly affect the laws in the vicinity. The sword of heavenly water that Yumu was controlling had become 10 times wider. Other than him, the other sun god realm cultivators were also standing on his sword. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to keep up with Du Yuan's sword of destruction. They were holding their swords in their arms, taking the opportunity to temper their sword intent. Streaks of sword light were released from their bodies, resonating with the sword of sky water. Some of the sword light contained the violent aura of rumbling thunder, while others were gentle and sunny, exuding an aura of peace and tranquility. However, when Du Yuan exclaimed, "The dragon beheading platform," everyone's sword intent suddenly froze for a moment. Almost at the same time, they turned to look at Du Yuan. Yu Yuan seems to have summoned the dragon beheading platform in the domain of fireflies, and is fighting Azuras. Du Yuan's expression was grim. After explaining, he quickly withdrew his gaze. After pausing for a few seconds, he looked sternly at Yu Mu and snorted. "I vaguely remember that you were friends with him in your previous life." Yu Mu laughed dryly. "That was before. Back then, he was the alchemist with the most potential in the medicine god sect. This isn't strange. After all, those who flattered and fawned over him back then all did it for his medicine. You have to avoid arousing suspicion in the future," Du Yuan reminded him kindly. Yu Mu nodded. That girl, no wonder she ignored the rules of the forbidden area and forced her way into the Firefly Star Zone. So it's because he's in this galaxy. Du Yuan looked ahead at the long river of sword light. "We don't need to care about Yu Yuan's life or death. He's not worth mentioning. We entered the domain of Firefly to help the Starfrost sword find the entrance to the frigid depth." At this time, Du Yuan was still unaware that Jining Shuang had already been trapped by the Su Luo cage. The reason why he and Yu Mu had changed their path midway was because he had sensed that the sharp sword light of the Sword of Starfrost had suddenly disappeared when it was extremely bright. He guessed that Jining Shuang was in trouble, so he rushed over immediately. "Martial Uncle Du, why do you look down on Yu Yuan?" a young female sword immortal asked softly with a frown on the sky water sword. She was a full cycle older than Chen Qinyan. She was currently at the Middle Yang God realm. She had a quiet temperament and a pretty face. Jining Shuang, the Sword of Starfrost, was her idol. The reason why she had joined the Sword sect was because she had heard about Jining Shuang's outstanding talent. She could have chosen to join the Primal Yang sect or the Xuantianzong sect, but instead, she had joined the Sword sect. However, she hadn't been able to become Jining Shuang's disciple. Instead, she had become the disciple of Fanheching, the Sword of Shattering. Through Fanheching, she had learned about Yu Yuan's existence. Later, she had heard more about Yu Yuan's deeds, which had amazed her. Later, she had learned that Yu Yuan was actually the Haunch from 300 years ago after the battle in the Forbidden Area of the Falling Moon Forbidden Area. Immediately, she had developed a strong interest in Yu Yuan. In private, she had even gone to Chen Qinyan and asked him about Yu Yuan. However, all she had learned was that Yu Yuan was extraordinary. Gradually, she felt that the Yu Yuan from 300 years later and her idol, Jining Shuang, could have made a beautiful story. She had thought that the two of them were a perfect match. To her regret, Yu Yuan had repeatedly turned down the Sword sect's recruitment. In the end, he had joined the Shunhun sect and become a traitor in everyone's eyes. How can a mere Yu Yuan catch my eye? Du Yuan frowned impatiently. Even 300 years ago, when he became a divine-grade alchemist, he was nothing more than a medicine refiner. After a pause, Du Yuan added, he even went astray and tried to make poisonous pills to prolong his life before he died. What a joke! In a strange, icy world, many Azura clansmen looked up at the sky in the distance. They saw a strangely large rectangular rock that hung in the sky like a strange moon, releasing white light. The Azuras, whose bloodlines weren't very high, realized that the collapse of heaven and earth in this world was caused by this rock. Before they had time to think, they saw another rank 9 warrior of the same race, whose spikes were as sharp as platinum, suddenly appear. Furthermore, they were roaring in the human language. "A human from Hauran! The Platinum Azuras are here for him." All of a sudden, all the Azura clansmen in the world were in a state of panic. Their domain of fireflies hadn't been taken care of by human cultivators for tens of thousands of years. However, it was adjacent to the most famous alien battlefield after all. The powerful Asuras of the domain of fireflies would also go to the alien battlefield to fight the humans and demons of Hauran. How could they not know what the humans of Hauran represented? Calamity, death, misery, and suffering. Thinking back to the information their high-grade warriors had brought back from the Starry River, the Asura clansmen in this world felt that this cold realm had become even colder. Whoosh! A tiny soul shadow that was hard to see with the naked eye suddenly emerged from the long, huge rock. In this world, only the most powerful Asuras could vaguely see it with the help of special tools. It should be the form of a human's soul. They held their breaths and paid close attention. What are you shouting about? Above the dragon-slaying platform, Yuan, whose soul had appeared, said with a cold expression under the hazy white light screen, "If this wasn't the domain of fireflies, the snow bear's territory, it would have been destroyed. If it wasn't for this domain of fireflies, it would have belonged to Elena in the future." Looking down at the shattered world, Yuan yelled, "All living beings in this world are dead. You're courting death." The exasperated Shiala had been patient with him for a long time. She hadn't acted rashly because Brutal Bear was there. At this moment, Shiala couldn't stand it anymore. Her bloodline suddenly boiled. "I knew it. You thought you could defeat me." Yuan sneered. His soul disappeared into the dragon-slaying platform. With a thought, the rectangular dragon-slaying platform suddenly enlarged 100 times. Like a towering mountain, it pressed down on Shiala. Roar, roar, roar. Dozens of giant dragons that had once dominated the universe roared furiously inside the dragon-slaying platform. Dense cold lightning turned into hundreds of slender ice dragons that flew out of the dragon-slaying platform. Nourished by the aura of the dragon of space and time, they instantly broke open a void passage. Before Shiala's bloodline was activated, she saw pocket-sized ice dragons swimming in the dark cold well she carried. She was dazed for a moment. Boom! The gigantic dragon beheading platform smashed down just like that. The enormous power of space-time collapsing poured into Shirala, causing this level 9 platinum Asura and the dark domain cold well to suddenly fall to the ground like a meteor cannonball, digging a deep hole in the solid ground that was as hard as ice. Yuan's soul clearly appeared inside the dragon-slaying platform. He looked coldly at the cave and said, "I'll use reality to tell you that the dragon-slaying platform I control can suppress your dark cold well." As soon as he said this, thousands of streaks of light flew out from under the dragon-slaying platform. The streaks of light entered the deep cave below and locked onto Shiala with precision, bombarding her like a storm. "Actually, you're not as strong as you think." Chapter 1333. The streaks of light carried a majestic dragon aura that could intimidate the void and wipe out all life in the world. The stronger Asuras in this world gathered from all directions. They only needed to look up at the sky to be shaken by the shocking power released by the dragon beheading platform. They couldn't even stand straight. The divine artifact-level dragon beheading platform showed a little divine power, but it wasn't something a rank 6 Asura could withstand. When the streaks of light appeared, the Asuras, who were still 100 kilometers away from the deep cave, were shaken to the core. However, the Asura clan's pride still made them walk with great difficulty towards Shirala. Asuras were never afraid of death. Boom! The place where the streaks of light landed, the cave, which wasn't very wide, suddenly tore open. The roar from the depths of the Earth's core caused the flat wilderness to shake violently like a carpet. Thousands of deep ravines that were as dense as spider webs instantly appeared. With the cave Shirala had fallen into as the center, they crazily extended in all directions. The cave also released multicolored light, and the cracks became bigger and bigger. Shiala's muffled groans rang out nonstop, and soon turned into coughs. It was as if he was vomiting blood at the bottom of the cave. Yuan's tall god soul shadow appeared clearly above the dragon beheading platform and suddenly enlarged several times. At this moment, He was like an ancient god draped in moonlight and silver light, looking down at the cracked cave with a cold expression. "You think too highly of yourself." The corner of his mouth twitched slightly as he coldly commented. In that world where there was a hidden, cold abyss entrance, when he met Shirala again, this platinum Azura who carried a dark domain cold well immediately attacked. He thought that he had severely injured the frigid snow bear, and that there was indeed a misunderstanding between them. He took the initiative to explain and stop the battle. On one hand, the frigid snow bear's injuries still needed to be treated and paid attention to. On the other hand, he felt that Elena was still here, and he still wanted to explore the long river of sword light. He didn't want to cause too much trouble. It wasn't because he was afraid. Shiala's words and actions after that made Yu Yuan gradually realize one thing: the other party actually thought that he was afraid of death when he shouted to stop. That platinum Azura, whose bloodline had reached rank 9 but was not born in Dark Realm, naturally thought that she could control his life and death at will. She felt that she didn't make a move because she was giving face to the frigid snow bear. That was why he had targeted her with words and faces full of disdain. When he asked her to pass a message to Alonso, he even mocked and ridiculed her, picking on her in all sorts of ways. Everything was because of Shiala's sense of superiority and her self-confidence. Thus, Yu Yuan understood what he had to do to make Shura, who was used to speaking with strength, take his suggestions seriously and seriously. The reason why he chose a nearby star was because it would be safer for his Een spirit to be in a world surrounded by a realm wall. Also, if they were in the world where the frigid snow bear and his true body were, he and Shirala would not be able to fight. A low growl from the snow bear was enough to make Shirala obediently retreat into the river of stars. This rank 9 platinum Azura didn't dare to fight him. If he didn't fight and beat her into submission, she would cause more trouble in the future. "Get away from me!" Seeing that more than a dozen rank 6 Azuras were running across the cracked ice field with expressions of death on their faces, Yu Yuan's face darkened as she shouted in fluent Azura language, "Don't you dare attack me!" After the life altar inside of him had refined and digested a drop of 9th-grade outsider's blood essence, it had mastered the outsider's language and writing. Now, he could be said to be proficient in the languages of various races and could be called a profound language expert. Who are you? 50 kilometers away, a burly Azura man was riding on a two-headed snow wolf. He raised his silver spear high and yelled in a threatening manner, but was actually cowardly. Yu Yuan couldn't be bothered to deal with him, and used a soul art from the great Een soul art. The soul energy that originated from him was like a mysterious primer. It summoned the power of the giant frost dragon inside the dragon-slaying platform and formed a show of ice light in this real world. His soul energy was like an exquisite hand of the great Tao. It grasped the ice power and formed hundreds of ice blades and wind blades. 50 kilometers away, a dozen or so Azura warriors who were rushing with all their might were devoured by the terrifying ice and snow. They were cut by the blades and turned into a bloody mess in the blink of an eye. Yu Yuan, how dare you cause a massacre in the Firefly Star region? No one can save you. Shiala's scream sounded like a malicious ghost from hell. It was hair-raising. Yu Yuan was unmoved. He even had the dragon-slaying platform lower slightly and enlarge it by dozens of times. The dragon-slaying platform that stretched across the sky covered hundreds of kilometers. It seemed to have become a complete white world that stood above this icy world. In the eyes of the Azuras who could see Yu Yuan, he was the god who would take over this world. Beside the long river of sword light, along with the wide rivers of fireflies flying across the sky above the shattered stars, Alonso, the Azura race's commander-in-chief, suddenly asked, his eyes as sharp as swords, "What the hell is Shirala doing?" He looked at Damien, who was holding the blood-boiling war drum. Damien, who was taller and more majestic than him and reeked of blood, stopped flowing when he stared at him with cold eyes. The bloodline suppression of a superior to that of a subordinate, and the instinctive reverence, caused Damien to kneel on one knee. Damien lowered his head and activated the blood-boiling war drum first. He communicated with the people of the Dark Realm. Then he said, "It seems that he has a conflict with Yu Yuan." Yu Yuan? Alonso frowned slightly as he stroked the man's slightly slender chin. Soon after, he looked at Jining Shuang, who was temporarily imprisoned by the pseudo-cage. Jining Shuang, who was dressed in white and looked like a frost flower on a precipice, had calmed down. She no longer attacked with her sword or tried to penetrate the snow cage's barrier with her sharp sword beams. Sensing Alonso's gaze, she turned her head and looked at Alonso in the vegetative landing cage. Her beautiful eyes, which made people feel ashamed of themselves, were filled with arrogance and coldness. She didn't feel like a prisoner at all. "This cage can't kill me. I know." Alonso smiled and nodded. He didn't deny it. "You have something that might help you penetrate the snow cage." Jining Shuang was slightly surprised. She didn't seem to think that the Azura race's commander-in-chief could see through this. She was so calm and arrogant. Naturally, she had enough confidence. The sword sect had a deep foundation and many amazing treasures. As a great sword immortal with limitless potential who had a chance of breaking through to the nascent divinity realm, she naturally had other things to rely on. Alonso smiled again. "You didn't use it because the price was too high. Du Yuan and Yu Mu are already on their way here. You are also waiting. You believe that when the two of them arrive, you will have more confidence and strength to break through the seal of the Sua Luo cage and fight me with real swords and spears." Jining Shuang didn't say anything. "It's fine. I'll let you see Du Yuan and Yu Mu and have the three of you meet here." Alonso took out a huge crystal ball from his chest and said with an extremely calm expression, "This is made from the eye of a 9th-grade heavenly star beast in the domain of illusion. Because we're getting closer and closer, the distance between us, Shirala, and that kid has almost reached the point where it can vaguely see them." The crystal ball suddenly shone brightly. Everyone narrowed their eyes and looked closely. It was as if they could see a strange, white world floating in Yu Yuan and Shiala's realms. They saw the dragon beheading platform. However, compared to the dragon beheading platform, Yu Yuan's nether soul and Shiala's were very small. It was extremely difficult to see them. Even Alonso and Jining Shuang couldn't see them clearly. "Fortunately, they went easy on us," Alonso muttered to himself. He could see that the world with the Azura race's kingdom was in a desolate, uninhabited region. Snowy mountains and icy peaks had collapsed. The three kingdoms where the Azura race were gathered hadn't been attacked by the dragon beheading platform, and were still standing. Inside the snow cage, Jining Shuang's beautiful eyes glittered with icy light. Two dazzling galaxies seemed to have appeared in the depths of her eyes. She was doing her best to see if Yu Yuan's figure could be seen in the crystal ball. Unfortunately, part of her soul power and sword intent were restrained by the snow cage, so she couldn't display their full power. Adding to the fact that the crystal ball didn't reflect everything clearly, she couldn't see Yu Yuan's nether soul. However, she had learned from Alonso that Yu Yuan was in the world inside the crystal ball. This fact alone was enough to make her heart surge. After 300 years, she was finally able to open her heart and talk to Yu Yuan freely in the Starry River without having to worry about her sex reputation. She wanted to say some words that had been bottled up in her heart for 300 years. This was the reason why she had resolutely broken into this forbidden land despite the rules. "Grand Commander!" Damien suddenly looked up. Alonso motioned for him to speak quickly. "Shiala sent a message to that kid named Yu Yuan. She asked him to pass on a message." Damien took a deep breath. Seeing the impatience on Alonso's face, he hurriedly said, "He hopes that you will ensure that the sword radiance of the Starfrost sword will not be extinguished before the long river of sword radiance meets that absolute frost world." Upon hearing these words, Jining Shuang's heart rippled slightly. Her originally sharp eyebrows seemed to have softened a little because of Damien's words. Could it be that that kid doesn't know how dazzling and dazzling this Starfrost sword is? Alonso shook his head in surprise. Then, he deliberately stirred up trouble. What if I don't agree? What can he do if I don't agree? Well. Damien lowered his head again, as if to communicate with her in secret. Alonso crossed his arms in front of his chest and continued to wait calmly. His understanding of Yu Yuan started when he met Xiala and Damien after he arrived in the Firefly Star Zone and heard about Yu Yuan's deeds from them. Then, he learned from Elena about some of her experiences with Yu Yuan. He didn't have a deep impression of him. Alonso only felt that this kid who had rushed out of Howren was really lucky. Not only did he manage to climb up the big tree of the Shenhun sect, but he also won the goodwill of the immortal bird. Moreover, he had obtained the dragon beheading platform and the soul of the heaven-toppling sword when he was in Howren. Alonso, who had never met Yu Yuan and only heard about him from others, habitually thought that Yu Yuan's combat ability was probably not worth mentioning because his cultivation level was too low. Such a guy is threatening me now? Alonso didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Oh! Suddenly, the scene in the crystal ball in front of him made his expression change abruptly, and he exclaimed in a low voice. Chapter 1334. Alonso's low exclamation caused the 5 platinum Azuras to look at him in unison. Gazes that were mixed with shock and confusion landed on the crystal ball that was made of the heavenly star beast's eyes, and watched the images that appeared within it. The dragon subduing platform, which looked like another white world, suddenly crashed to the ground. Endless light, divine lightning, and frost storms suddenly exploded when the dragon-subduing platform came into contact with the ground. All of them seeped into the world below. The divine lightning, light, and thunder occasionally transformed into all kinds of giant dragons. Thunder Dragon, Giant Frost Dragon, Golden Azure Dragon, Jade Dragon, and many others had appeared in Vast Sea City before. They had experienced a period of glory and prosperity, and it was as if they had rushed out from the ancient era, displaying their heaven-shocking power to the world. All of the dragons went deep into the ground after a glance. Boom! Boom boom! The 3 Azura kingdoms were reduced to rubble in an instant. Towering stone pagodas and palaces shattered one after another. Villages and cities were also destroyed in an instant. The power of the giant dragons rampaged underground and destroyed more than half of the core structure of this icy world. At the center of the earth, where no one could see, the dragon from Hao Kuang seemed to be using its innate bloodline divine ability to turn the cold world that was suitable for the Azura race into a brand new kingdom that was born according to its will. Nation of Dragons. The dragon subduing platform's divine power was actually assimilating and changing this world, transforming it into ice power. Even Yu Yuan, who was casting the spell, didn't seem to expect this at first. He didn't think that the dragon-subduing platform would be so terrifying when he let go of everything and used its power. Yu Yuan. Damien, who was holding the blood-boiling war drum, felt a ball of violent fire burn in his chest. He stared at the crystal ball like a wild beast about to go mad. He could clearly see that the realm barrier around the planet was showing signs of tearing. It seemed like it was about to collapse and turn to dust right in front of his eyes. What would happen to the Azura clansmen who lived inside the realm barrier when it was torn? Most of the Azuras with bloodlines below rank 6 wouldn't be able to withstand the filth from outer space. They would either die quickly or become mutated monsters. The shattering of the realm barrier meant that the realm was no longer suitable for living beings to live in. Unlike before, Yu Yuan was going all out this time. He threw his feelings for Elena and the cold abyss snow bare to the back of his mind. Alonso, who saw this scene, knew that as the 3 Azura nations collapsed, Many of his clansmen with weaker bloodlines would be buried. Many of his clansmen would die because of this. A terrifying aura that caused Damien and the others to tremble slowly emerged from Alonso's chest and gradually grew stronger. Lola looked to the side and saw a golden sun condensing in front of Alonso's chest. The radiance that she didn't dare to stare at for too long suddenly bloomed. It was so dazzling, so resplendent. Chief Commander! The 5 Azura's bloodline knew what was going to happen. Even Jining Shuang, who was in the Soluo cage, was moved and looked at Alonso in shock. She also realized that this rank 10 Azura race's most powerful being had used his precious blood essence to perform some kind of profound innate divine ability. Chief Commander! In the distance, hundreds of rank 8 and rank 7 Azura warriors were shouting at each other, not knowing what to do. They were also shocked by Alonso's actions. They didn't know who or what kind of power could make their chief commander use his blood essence in a hurry. Under countless gazes, Alonso slowly stretched out his hand and touched the crystal ball with a finger. A drop of golden blood that caused all the Azura present to feel suffocated seeped out of his fingertip and fell into the crystal ball. In the blink of an eye, an extremely secret blood pattern array engraved on the top of the crystal ball was activated. The crystal ball suddenly shone with dazzling golden light. Then, that drop of golden blood, which was filled with endless mysteries, disappeared under the gazes of Damien and the others. Alonso's body was as still as a statue. He looked a little stiff and abnormal. Damien, Lola, and the 3 Platinum Azuras took the initiative to surround Alonso with grim expressions. They were on guard, not allowing anyone to take a single step closer. They were well aware that the Commander-in-Chief was in an extremely dangerous situation. The drop of golden blood was absorbing the Chief Commander's vast blood energy and using his infinite soul energy. As expected, a brand new Alonso, a pure gold form, suddenly appeared in the world inside the crystal ball. His entire body was enveloped in a golden radiance, and he exuded boundless pressure as he searched for Yu Yuan's figure in the air. The entire world, the void, the earth, the mosquitoes, and the laws of nature seemed to be reflected in his golden eyes. The moment he appeared, the entire strange frost world was sprinkled with a layer of golden rain. He was like a giant golden sun. Wherever his light passed, the churning earth instantly calmed down. The world walls that were gradually torn apart were glued together by the golden light. The cracks that opened up quickly closed, and the broken laws were repaired. When he appeared, the world that was about to collapse stabilized before he did anything. He was still searching for Yu Yuan. After a round of investigation, he found that there was no sign of Yu Yuan's blood energy or soul thought in this absolute cold world. There was no abnormal spirit energy either. In the end, his gaze stopped on the dragon beheading platform. Inside the dragon beheading platform, Yu Yuan, who was in her god form, was finally exposed to the golden Azura. Obviously, when he sensed that something was wrong, Yu Yuan's soul had returned to the dragon beheading platform immediately. He didn't continue to fly in the real world so boldly. Otherwise, Alonso's drop of golden blood, even if part of it had descended, was enough to injure or kill his soul. Chief Commander! Shiala, whose entire body had shrunk into the dark domain cold well, saw the golden figure appear. She bowed with fear and self-blame. She was full of resentment. She never would have thought that Yu Yuan could use a soul to control the dragon beheading platform and display such exaggerated strength. Alonso borrowed a drop of precious golden blood essence and the blood pattern array of the mysterious crystal ball to suddenly appear here. It meant that even the chief commander was angry. Shiala smiled bitterly. She was resentful and regretful at the same time. She finally realized a fact. When Yu Yuan went crazy, he really did not care about anything and had extremely terrifying destructive power. "I'll deal with you later." Alonso's golden figure looked at her coldly and shouted, Yu Yuan, I am Alonso. If you dare to wantonly destroy this world again, I will not forgive you even if you have violent bear's protection. I have come to treat this matter seriously, to treat you seriously. He glared at the dragon beheading platform. His voice was like thunder, exploding the entire world. Boom! The dragon beheading platform, which was suppressing this world, once again burst out destructive streaks of light and poured into the depths of the earth. Underground, the sea of golden light was penetrated by the streaks of light, and the newly woven laws of the earth were destroyed again. The power of a grand cultivator that could distort time and space surged to the void realm wall. It mixed with Alonso's golden divine light and set off ripples that seemed to shatter time and space, painting the void realm wall with colorful brilliance. The abnormal scene in the sky and the tremors underground made Shiala scream in shock. Alonso sent a drop of golden blood over and took the initiative to reveal his identity. He also had the attitude of making peace. Yu Yuan dared to talk back? Was he really crazy? Shiala was so regretful that her intestines turned green. She knew that no matter what the result was, Alonso would definitely punish her later. It was because of her incompetence that this world suffered such a tragic fate and caused many weak people to suffer. First, Shiala deliberately made things difficult for me. I tried my best to ask her to send a message to you, but you didn't give me face. Since that's the case, I'll pierce through the stars that fill the sky of your domain of fireflies and bury millions of Azuras with my Starfrost sword. Yu Yuan's nether soul shadow was deliberately enlarged in the dragon beheading platform so that Alonso could see it clearly. The dragon-slaying platform slowly floated in the air and temporarily separated from the ground below. When the golden light radiating from Alonso's body landed on the dragon-slaying platform, it was like boiling water that was evaporating into a golden mist. Yu Yuan's expression was cold and deep, as if he were in a different time and space, confronting Alonso with equal harshness. How much of your power can a drop of golden blood bring to bear? Yu Yuan seemed unusually calm. He even grinned and said, "To be honest, I hope you can spare more power and come here to make trouble for me. Because if you do, when Du Yuan and Yu Mu arrive at Su Luo Cage one after another, you won't be able to use your full power. Also," he deliberately stretched out his voice, and then said unhurriedly, "I can feel the suppression of sword sect cultivators in those long rivers of sword light. But there's one thing I hope you'll think about seriously. What I've comprehended is the true essence of that moon-severing realm grand cultivator's sword Tao. The sword spirit used to be with me, and the scabbard is with me. Sooner or later, the heaven-piercing sword will come to me and fall into my hands. Perhaps I'll be able to resolve the suppression of sword sect cultivators in the long rivers of sword light he left behind. I might even be able to use the power of the sword light that has been lost for tens of thousands of years. Alonso, Shiala, now, do you think I'm actually qualified to bargain with you?" Yu Yuan let out a long laugh on the dragon beheading platform. At this moment, he naturally exuded an enchanting and subduing aura. Shiala was absent-minded for a moment. She had a feeling that the person she had just praised was a supreme nascent divinity of Hauran, who stood at the peak of the starry river. He was a supreme being who didn't even take the star behemoths and all the foreign experts seriously. Shirala had only seen that kind of graceful bearing and leisurely aura in a very few people. The great demon god Bertuns, Han Yuan Yuan of Xuantianzong, and their king. Chapter 1335. Shirala raised her head high in a daze. In her vision, Yu Yuan, who appeared on the dragon-slaying platform, seemed to have become another person. It seemed so unfamiliar and made her feel uneasy. Under the golden divine light that filled the sky, the dragon-slaying platform formed a world of its own. The divine power it released was so strong that her heart would stop beating if she looked at it a few more times. She immediately knew that it was blasphemy for her to stare at this legendary divine object for a long time. It was a great disrespect. When her eyes stung and tears flowed uncontrollably, she suddenly came to her senses and was forced to look away. Slay. Dragon slaying platform. She lowered her head. Her heart had suffered a strong impact. She was so shocked that her soul was about to go crazy. Therefore, she began to recall what she had heard about the dragon-slaying platform. However, she was surprised to find that there was pitifully little information about the dragon-slaying platform and the dragon slayer. She could imagine that the Shunhun sect was the strongest force that established the prosperity of the human race. It was precisely because of the appearance of the Shunhun sect's peerless divine kings that the rampant dragons died one after another and promoted the noble status of the human race in Hauran. Then, the human race took the great demons and marched to the outer space one after another, creating the magnificent feat of conquering all living beings in the outer space. Back then, the dragon race only looted the outer space every once in a while. They never dared to engage in a large-scale battle with the elite allied forces of the foreign races. Compared to the Shunhun sect, the damage and destruction caused by the dragon race to the various races in the outer space was just a small matter. Although it was annoying, it did not hurt the Foundation. The Shunhun sect was obviously different. They worked together with the demons of Hauran and fought with all the experts of the advanced intelligent races with real weapons. In the Milky Way, in all the perilous places, countless foreign race warriors and high-level exotic beasts were killed because of this. It was the existence of the Shunhun sect that made the various races in the outer space gradually realize a fact. The human race had already surpassed the extraterrestrial demons and become the strongest overlords in the vast and boundless universe. The current 5 supreme forces were merely following the footsteps and strategies of the Shunhun sect. They had opened up a good path and continued to move forward step by step. Sherera shook her head bitterly. She slowly realized that for Yu Yuan to be recognized by the dragon beheading platform and be able to control it, there was indeed something extraordinary about him. Stop! Alonso, who was condensed from a drop of golden blood, looked as if he was made of liquid gold. He stood in midair with a grim expression under the brilliant realm barrier. He was also surprised. Evidently, he did not expect that Yu Yuan would still dare to be so impudent and arrogant after knowing that he had arrived and made his status clear. However, Yu Yuan's previous words gave him a certain amount of pressure. It was because Yu Yuan was the inheritor of the 9 slashes that raised heaven. Perhaps he really had the ability to change the long river of sword light and control the sword energy that had been hidden for thousands of years. Do you think I'll stop just because you say so? Yu Yuan's soul shadow inside the dragon beheading platform sneered. He did not take the Golden Azura's words as an effective threat at all. I vaguely remember that you said some unpleasant things to Sherera not long ago. Alonso's expression turned cold. Let's go somewhere else. Inside the dragon beheading platform, Yu Yuan suddenly blurted out these words without rhyme or reason. In an instant, the dragon beheading platform floating in this world shrank to the size of a palm at an indescribable speed. Suddenly, streams of light overflowed. The feeling of time and space flipping and the world sinking and twisting made the survivors in this world feel so uncomfortable that they all vomited blood. Even the Platinum Azura, Sherera, let out a muffled groan. She felt that her heart had been squeezed and was in obvious pain. Alonso opened his mouth to call out, but he found that a long and narrow crack had appeared in the void where the miniature dragon beheading platform was. It was like a colorful space-time tunnel that had been opened by a 7-colored divine dragon. In the depths of the tunnel, he could vaguely see the illusory figure of a divine dragon. Whoosh! The dragon beheading platform disappeared without a trace in an instant. The space-time tunnel that had appeared suddenly disappeared like a bubble in water. Look at what you've done. Alonso looked at the shattered mountains and rivers, the collapsed Azura kingdom, the wailing clansmen, and the irreparable meridians in the ground from high up in the sky. He said coldly to Sherera, "You knew that he was with Bao Xiong, and that he controlled the dragon beheading platform, but you didn't treat him seriously. After this is over, you'll be punished by the chief." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned into a streak of golden lightning and broke through the realm barrier and flew away. Sherera was left alone in this extremely cold world full of holes. While regretting and lamenting, he thought about how to clean up the mess and calm the tremors in this world as much as possible. All right, let's not continue. In an even larger icy realm, Alonso descended like a streak of golden lightning. He stopped among the white clouds and purposely restrained his shocking blood power. The dragon beheading platform had also become the size of a regular and quietly floated above the white clouds. Alonso narrowed his eyes, and with a thought, he learned that there were as many as 5 Azura kingdoms in this world of the Firefly domain. There were also some vassals of the Azura race, the Crypt race, and a small number of Moonlight people living in this world. The population of this world was in the hundreds of thousands, and there were even rank 7 Azura warriors. However, this world was actually separated from the previous one by a space. Yu Yuan could use the dragon beheading platform's power to open a dazzling tunnel and arrive directly. It would take some time for him to arrive, but Yu Yuan could arrive instantly. This meant that if Yu Yuan could use the dragon beheading platform to travel through the Firefly domain continuously, even he, with his rank 10 bloodline, wouldn't be able to catch up immediately. By the time he arrived, it would be too late. If I were to attack, this world would have been destroyed by the time you arrived. Yu Yuan, who insisted on staying on the dragon beheading platform, remained calm and restrained. I'll say it again. I don't care about the lives of Du Yuan, Yu Mu, and the other members of the Sword sect. But that Starfrost sword, I want her to live well. I don't want anything to happen to her before she meets me. Alonso only hesitated for a few seconds before nodding without hesitation. I promise. This time, he did it so cleanly and neatly. Yu Yuan grinned. I think I've finally figured out how to communicate with you Azuras. If he didn't beat them into submission, if he didn't show them enough strength, he wouldn't have a chance to talk to them. The battle-thirsty and fearless Azuras were perhaps the most realistic beings of the foreign races. Only when they realized that you had the ability to destroy everything important to them, their stars, their people, and their worlds, would they have the patience to talk to you. They would have to treat your conditions seriously and cautiously. If you had done this earlier, why would I have to do this? Yu Yuan nodded with a smile. You see, I once saved Fernan, and I have a good relationship with Elena. Not long ago, I fought alongside her in the Illusion Star Zone. I even helped Shirala and Damien, although they didn't appreciate it. Comprehending the heaven-piercing sword is another matter. I haven't killed too many Azuras. He laid the groundwork. Alonso's expression was strange. He listened to him talk nonsense, but didn't interrupt him. For some reason, looking at Yu Yuan, who was calmly bargaining with him without the slightest fear, a thought suddenly popped into his mind. Nie Qingtian really knows how to choose his successor. Then, he couldn't help but think that Yu Yuan was actually the ruler of the dragon beheading platform. Nie Qingtian again. That person again. Both sides acknowledged Yu Yuan. How could this kid be easy to deal with? With this thought, he hated Xiala even more. Alonso was about to say something when his expression suddenly flickered, as if he had sensed something. Astonished, he looked at the river of sword light outside the realm barrier. His gaze seemed to penetrate the boundless space, and he saw something that surprised him. What's wrong? Are Du Yuan and the others about to arrive? Yu Yuan asked with a smile. He also felt that, considering their cultivation bases and battle prowess, if they flew at full speed, it was indeed possible for them to reach the river of sword light after such a long journey. After all, the river of sword light was actually rushing towards the realm where his true form was at a high speed. "It's not Duyuan or Yumu," Alonso said with a deep frown. Alonso frowned, looked at him deeply, and said, "In short, I promise that the next time we meet, the Frost Star Sword will be alive. You also have to promise me that you won't continue to slaughter people in the domain of Firefly with the dragon beheading platform. Remember, this realm will be under Elena's control in the future. When she returns from the Dark Realm, the domain of Firefly will be hers." With these words, Alonso, who had been condensed from a drop of his golden blood, suddenly merged into the realm barrier of this heaven and earth. Then, under Yu Yuan's gaze, he disappeared into the realm barrier. Chapter 1336. Alonso left in a hurry. This man seemed to be able to establish subtle connections with the realm walls of many realms in this domain with the help of his golden blood. Then, he would complete the blood descent. He had done the same when he had arrived on the previous star, and now he was in a hurry to leave. However, such a method of descent seemed to consume a lot of power. Otherwise, he wouldn't have followed him after he entered this world with the dragon beheading platform. Could there be other restrictions other than the great consumption? A wisp of doubt rose in Yu Yuan's heart. Before Alonso left, he didn't say that it was because of Duyuan, Yumu, and the others, as if there were other reasons. However, since he had made a solemn promise, Yu Yuan felt a lot more at ease. With Alonso's reputation and status, it was unlikely that he would go back on his word and take an unconventional approach. Since he was in this world, Yu Yuan's soul didn't fly out in a hurry. Instead, he continued to rely on the dragon beheading platform to explore the changes in the outside world, and see if there were any abnormalities in the starry river outside. Stars dotted the sky and cold mist lingered in the sky. There were no obvious abnormalities. The realm walls of the star he had just left seemed to be smeared with a layer of golden light. From afar, the golden light looked like needles and threads that were mending. Yu Yuan immediately realized that even though Alonso had left long ago, the bloodline power he had left behind was still doing its best to repair the broken world caused by the dragon beheading platform. Suddenly, to Yu Yuan's surprise, he felt that he was somehow connected to the world where mountains and rivers had been shattered. However, as the golden light mended it, a sea of golden light in the depths of the Earth's core worked hard to adjust the veins and core rules. His connection with the world was rapidly weakening. Yu Yuan couldn't help but ponder. Then, he remembered that when he had used the power of the dragon beheading platform to water that world with thousands of streaks of light, the extremely cold environment of that world seemed to have undergone fundamental changes. It was slowly moving closer to the structure of the Earth's core in Hauran. With this thought, his soul spread out his soul awareness and moved between the two different realms of the dragon beheading platform. He looked at the burial ground of the many dragons, then at the spacetime dragon and the frost dragon. There was also the purple-gold dragon egg that seemed to be surrounded by the light of the great Tao. Could it be that the dragon beheading platform had the ability to assimilate an entire world? Or was it because the baby of a Titanspinosaurus was growing healthily inside the dragon-slaying platform and had swallowed the remaining blood energy of the ancient demons on the totem poles not long ago that the dragon-slaying platform was endowed with brand-new wonders? Yu Yuan pondered. He felt that the dragon beheading platform's ability to assimilate a world and slowly change it toward Hauran had never existed before. In other words, when he was the dragon slayer and refined this item, it had become a divine weapon with incredible killing power that could suppress the entire dragon clan. Even then, it did not possess such power. The dragon-slaying platform seemed to have gained a new level of power in his hands in this life, because it had nurtured the Titanspinosaurus. The supreme old Titanspinosaurus had played a crucial role in the glory of the entire Hauran realm. Then, there was the source of the meridians and some other mysteries. Wasn't the birth of the ancient demons and the blossoming of their bloodline talents the reappearance of the bloodline laws that it had plundered? The baby that had been completely branded with its bloodline truths was growing in the dragon beheading platform. The aura it emitted resonated with the dragon auras and dragon might, stimulating brand new wonders. Assimilation of the world. The connection between the star that was gradually corrected by Alonzo's flesh and blood energy was gradually severed from him and the dragon beheading platform. However, Yu Yuan was not discouraged. Instead, he was excited and excited. What he was thinking was, if a brand new miracle really did exist and could be sustained, when the dragon beheading platform became strong enough, would it be possible to assimilate some of the stars that were similar to Howren into Howren realm? The turbid energy that could only be suitable for foreign races would be transformed into thin but purer spirit energy? It would become a world that even Howren mortals could live in? If this path worked, the mortals of Howren and the citizens of the various empires could be brought to outer space and spread their branches and leaves in the vast universe. Could it be that the Shenhun sect had such a plan? He suddenly remembered that when he was in the Thousand-Bird realm, the Shenhun sect had sent out several divine kings and killed the great demonic god Grek once, leaving behind a vast amount of blood energy. Sabonis was severely injured and almost died. According to Chun Qinghuang, the Shenhun sect wanted to gather a vast amount of blood energy to breed another dragon egg? Wasn't the purpose of breeding the dragon egg to let the baby Titanspinosaurus inside appear? What did the Shenhun sect want to do? Whoosh! The dragon-slaying platform took his spirit and flew away from the star that he hadn't destroyed yet. It appeared in the cold and desolate starry sky and immediately locked onto the moving star that was hidden in the mouth of the frigid abyss. The moving star was actually moving at an extremely slow speed. It was so slow that most people would miss it if they took a glance at it. Perhaps this was the only reason why it was so inconspicuous and difficult to find. He saw that the frigid snow bear was looking around anxiously outside the realm barrier, letting out low growls. Apparently, it was very worried. He immediately realized that this mysterious, frigid snow bear had actually gone out to find him. I'd better save my strength if I can. Feeling warm in his heart, he didn't use the dragon power left by the dragon of space and time that was buried in the dragon beheading platform. He didn't break through space again. Instead, he leisurely flew towards the snow bear from this planet. He knew that his nether soul was only squandering the power it had left in the dragon beheading platform. Only when he was strong enough to hold the dragon beheading platform in his true form and crazily infuse it with his blood power, spirit power, and soul power would he be able to amplify his strength with the help of the dragon beheading platform. Then, he would have the dragon beheading platform display heaven-shaking might that would allow him to contend against powerful experts in the Starry River. I don't think I'll have to wait for long, he muttered to himself. The dragon beheading platform allowed his nether soul to maintain a close connection with his nether soul even though they were separated by a vast starry river. He knew that his true form was working hard on tempering itself on the peak of a snowy mountain near the mouth of the frigid abyss. If it weren't for the dragon beheading platform, his nether soul wouldn't be able to establish a psychic connection with his true form at such a great distance. He also knew that if his true form was in danger at this moment, it would be able to teleport to the dragon beheading platform in the blink of an eye through the wonders of the dragon beheading platform. No wonder it's a divine tool. He sighed with emotion and swore to himself that when he returned to Howren, he would find a way to get the most important piece of it. He would see if he could go to the Nirvana spirit world and use the wonders there to make the broken dragon beheading platform whole again. With the baby of the Titanspinosaurus in his hands, the dragon beheading platform might be able to evolve again and become even more powerful than it had been before. Thousands of kilometers away, a grayish-white sword light suddenly streaked across the starry river. A wisp of sword intent that could wither plants and wither trees spread even though it was so far away. It was clearly captured by the dragon beheading platform. Shi Quan, the withered sword. Yu Yuan was taken aback. Just as he was about to examine it with the dragon beheading platform, he found that the sword light suddenly disappeared, as if it had been deliberately restrained, and became untraceable. Why is she here? Is Alonso shocked because of her? Yu Yuan was puzzled. After thinking about it carefully, he felt that it was unlikely. With Alonso's level 10 golden blood and 5 platinum azuras beside him, how could Shi Quan, who was only in the Freedom Realm and whose battle strength was not even comparable to the Starfrost sword, make Alonso so anxious? There are others. With this thought, Yu Yuan immediately thought that perhaps the news of him being in the Firefly Star Zone had spread like wildfire. In addition, the drastic changes in the Jilin Star Zone and the return of Yan Qiling and Yu Yi had attracted the attention of the Shenhun sect and the Chamber of Commerce. Shi Quan was the first to show up and take the lead. It should be for Jining Shuang. She was trying to save her junior sister. The others were either in the dark or on their way here. Obviously, Alonso had learned about it, so they were very anxious and left decisively without bargaining with him. Who else could it be other than Shi Quan? He suddenly looked forward to it and became more calm. Chapter 1337. Shi Quan didn't know that Yu Yuan was spying on her. Standing on the withering sword, which was made of white bones, she flew through another world of extreme coldness, looking up at the sky from time to time. In an ancient castle behind her, several 7th-grade Azura experts and their subordinates were lying in pools of blood. Wherever the withering sword passed, the plants withered, and even the smallest insects were killed by its sword intent. Shi Quan had come from the Dark Wing domain. She, who practiced the withering sword, had heard that there were many dead realms in the Dark Wing domain that were full of blooming flowers and lush trees. That was why she had gone there to explore them out of curiosity. She had a feeling that there was a strange power that was similar to the withering sword she had comprehended somewhere in the Dark Wing domain. However, she happened to run into Qiao Yuling and Qi Yunhong at the edge of the Dark Wing domain, and learned about the strange changes that had taken place in the domain of Dark Wing. She also learned that Chen Qinghuang and a few winged race elders had returned to the Dark Wing domain on gray geese with Brizette. She learned that Yu Yuan was in the domain of Firefly, while the experts of the Howran race were stationed in the Silver Scale race's domain of Silver Sand. In fact, she didn't care about any of this. It was her junior martial sister Jining Shuang who had made her decide to come to the domain of Firefly. After hearing the news about Jining Shuang, she knew that the stubborn girl would definitely go to the Firefly Star Zone to kill her. As for the Firefly Star Field, there was Alonso and the Platinum Azura who carried the Dark Domain cold well. Therefore, Shi Quan had come. Not long after she arrived in the Firefly Starfield, she saw a long river of sword light. She sensed the terrifying sword energy from the sword sect's experts. Unlike the other sword sect cultivators, she wasn't suppressed by the long river of sword light at all. This was because the withering sword that she cultivated could be considered to have gone astray. She was a sword cultivator who had entered a demonic state. This withering sword art was not in the records of the sword sect. It was a sword Dao that she had created herself. The river of sword light left behind by Nye Qintian couldn't sense her presence, so it posed no threat to her. She, who had an extreme personality to begin with, frequently killed Azuras on her way to the long river of sword light. She swung her sword as she pleased, but she only killed Azuras with relatively high bloodlines. She used this method to provoke the experts of the Azura race, hoping to kill a few decent opponents before she got close to the sword light river. The strange thing was that she had attacked several times and even waited in secret for a while, but she still didn't see a powerful Azura. Let alone a rank 9 platinum Azura, even a rank 8 Azura didn't appear. She couldn't stop cursing inwardly. In the Thousand Birds world, the Shunhun sect and the Tongtian Trading Company had worked together to severely injure the Shura of Gojoseon Sabonis. Even if the two sides had fallen out, she naturally did not care about the life and death of the Shura. She didn't fear revenge. Maybe I'm too restrained because of the restrictions of those two forces. Shiala's eyes were cold. She thought about the restrictions of the Tongtian Trading Company and the Shunhun sect. Therefore, she only targeted rank 7 high-rank Azuras in the Firefly Star Zone. She didn't pay attention to the weaker and lower Azura clansmen. Just as she was wondering if she should truly go all out and spread the power of the withered sword across the Azura race's nation, she suddenly felt a throbbing in her heart. Whoosh! An instant later, she appeared in the cold and desolate starry sky again on the withered sword. She was lost in thought as she looked at the wide river of sword light in the distance. She saw that one of them was gradually changing direction and giving off a frost aura. As expected of my junior sister. On the shattered star, Alonso, who was holding the crystal ball like a statue, suddenly shuddered in the golden light. He stuffed the drop of golden blood back into his heart after losing most of its power. Damien, Lola, and the other Platinum Azuras who were surrounding him let out a sigh of relief when they saw him stretch out his arms and legs. Grand Marshal! Damien pulled away and came to the back of the Luo cage and called out softly. The other 4 Platinum Azuras didn't say anything, but their gazes landed on Alonso. Clearly, they were waiting for Alonso's orders. They just noticed that Alonso seemed to have communicated with Yu Yuan in the world inside the crystal ball. However, Yu Yuan and the dragon beheading platform disappeared in an instant. Alonso also turned into a streak of golden light and flew into the distance. They didn't know what happened after that, and they didn't know why Alonso had rushed over in such a hurry. Clearly, the Sword of Annihilation and the Sword of Sky Water still needed some time to arrive. The 5 of them were strong enough to break Du Yuan and Yu Mu's swords. They couldn't do anything. There are some movements that you can't sense. The moment Alonso returned, he put down his argument with Yu Yuan and focused his attention on the present. He looked at the river of sword light that wasn't very conspicuous and didn't mix with the others. However, although this river of sword light was also moving closer to the entrance of the frigid abyss, it had actually deviated a little. It had just deviated a little. After a while, Alonso's sharp senses caught it. He felt that something was wrong. Therefore, after looking at the river of sword light for a while, he suddenly turned his head and looked at Jining Shuang. As expected, Jining Shuang, who was in the Luo cage, turned her body and stared at the deviated river of sword light. In the depths of Jining Shuang's cold eyes, many small stars could be seen flickering with a faint light. They were performing a strange arrangement, as if they were deducing something. The Luo cage couldn't stop them. However, Alonso was the wielder of the Luo cage. He could see and feel any minute changes in this holy artifact. Through the changes in the aura of the Luo cage, he knew that Jining Shuang was secretly comprehending something. What else could it be? Of course, it was the true essence of the sword Tao contained in the river of sword light, Nie Qingtian's sword intent. That was Nie Qingtian, the sword sect's #1 sword immortal in terms of slaughter, and he'd fallen out with the sword sect and the 5 powers in the end. So, how could Jining Shuang possibly comprehend anything? Alonso wasn't in a hurry at first because Jining Shuang's comprehension of the sword Tao didn't cause any minute changes. He was in a hurry just now because the changes finally appeared. Alonso took a deep breath and pointed at the Luo cage with a finger. His wrist gently rotated, seemingly casually fiddling with it. The motionless Luo cage suddenly moved and moved to another side of the starry sky. Because of this, Jining Shuang's eyes couldn't look directly at the river of sword light that was moving away. The numerous small stars that weren't very bright to begin with were completely extinguished at this moment. She turned her head and glanced at Alonso. Yu Yuan gave me a great surprise. I didn't care what he was before or whether he could refine medicine. I also admit that I underestimated him, so my clansman paid the price. Alonso's mouth was slightly bitter. He sighed and said, "You also gave me a great surprise." Inside the So Luo cage, Jining Shuang's expression was calm. She no longer appeared cold. It seemed that because Alonso mentioned Yu Yuan and even praised him, she was actually interested in talking with Alonso. 300 years ago, he didn't step onto the path of cultivation because his meridians were blocked. Her beautiful eyes bloomed with a breathtaking brilliance. If he could cultivate back then, if he could successfully become a cultivator, I believe that his achievements today will not be inferior to mine. If I can become a great sword immortal second only to a nascent soul in 300 years, he can too. I even think that he is more qualified than old Monsters Zoo to ascend to a new nascent soul. Her face glowed with a strange expression. Her words were full of pride and a kind of worship that came from the bottom of her heart. No one knew better than her about Yu Yuan's perception and talent. Medicine, sword intent, spirit arts, and the rules of the great Tao were all interconnected. When she and Yu Yuan were together, she was repeatedly enlightened by Yu Yuan. Every once in a while, Yu Yuan would say a few words to enlighten her and give her a flash of inspiration. At that time, she firmly believed that Yu Yuan's talent and perception were better than hers. She regretted that Yu Yuan was limited by his body and was unable to take that step. Then, seeing the end of his lifespan in a hurry, his personality changed greatly and he fell into the demonic path. Do you know how long it took for him to awaken in this life to possess his current realm and combat strength? The corners of Jining Shuang's mouth curled into a rare smile. It was very rare. Alonso shook his head. Less than 50 years, Jining Shuang said proudly. Alonso's face paled. Whoosh! Among the many rivers of sword light, the one that was gradually changing direction suddenly condensed and turned into a thin beam of light. It passed through the plane landing cage and merged into Jining Shuang's body. You can't stop it. Jining Shuang narrowed her eyes and said softly. It was as if she had suddenly traveled through time and become the cold girl from 300 years ago. Holding her sword, she stood silently behind Yu Yuan and looked at him with admiration. Chapter 1338. Yu Yuan met up with the frigid snow bear. The dragon-slaying platform floated above the realm barrier, in the depths of the thin cold mist. Through the platform, Yu Yuan's Yin spirit could clearly see that among the numerous streams of sword light, one of them actually contained the sword intent of Star Frost. That sword intent was originally hidden in the depths of the dragon-slaying platform. However, Jining Shuang, who was imprisoned in the plain fall cage, somehow triggered the sword intent of Star Frost and resonated with it. He even saw that among the dozens of rivers of sword light, the one with the sword intent of Star Frost suddenly disappeared. Strange. Yu Yuan was filled with questions and puzzles. Weren't the rivers of sword light left behind by Niechintian? Why did one of them contain the sword intent of Star Frost? With this thought, he suddenly remembered that there had been a lot of sword intent hidden at the bottom of the scabbard. Not only that, but it also contained the 9 slashes to the sky. Could it be that the sword light of a moon-severing realm cultivator also contained the true sword intent of a sword sect? Roar! At this moment, the mountainous frigid snow bear let out a low roar. Because they were no longer so far away from them, the rivers of sword light that were flying through the starry river magically began to slow down under the snow bear's roar. Not only did it slow down, but the trajectories of the river of sword lights also became crooked and curved. They were no longer in a straight line. What Yu Yuan didn't see was that the river of sword light that had been condensed and refined had actually disappeared into Ji Ningxuang's elemental cage, having been comprehended and dissolved by her. With the help of the dragon-slaying platform's broad vision, he could see that there were many realms between him and the rivers of sword light. Roar! Roar! The snow bear let out a low cry, its furry face filled with a serious expression. Its bloodline aura seemed to be communicating and tugging at the frosty mist that swirled around the star and the river of sword light that was just as thick as the one in the river of sword light. Yu Yuan's expression flickered as he came to a realization. In fact, the frigid snow bear was secretly guiding the river of sword light with the cold mist there. It was a frigid mist that enveloped the rivers of sword light and pulled them towards the frigid abyss, where the frigid abyss was located, in an attempt to bring them to Yu Yuan. Earlier, because there weren't any living realms nearby, the river of sword light had traveled in a straight line. Gradually, they got closer and closer to the star world where the Azura clan lived, blocking the path that the long river of sword light had to pass through. If the river of sword light continued to travel in a straight line at this moment, it would probably explode one star after another. At this moment, it was trying so hard to change the trajectory of the river of sword light, making it bend and curve, slowing down so much in an instant, all to prevent this from happening. The Firefly Star Zone was the star zone where it was active all year round. It was also one of its favorite places. Azuras here worshipped it as a god. Of course, it didn't want the lives that revered and worshipped it to be destroyed by the rivers of sword light. It didn't want the realms to shatter. Actually, I can go there. Seeing that it was working so hard, Yu Yuan couldn't bear it and took the initiative to express his opinion. It shook its head firmly. It even squeezed out a slightly forced smile at Yu Yuan, as if to say that it could do it. Its huge bare paw pointed down at the frigid world where the frigid abyss was located. As it pointed down, a beam of icy but gentle light vaguely enveloped Yu Yuan's true form. Yu Yuan's true form, who was sitting cross-legged on the snowy mountain peak with the scabbard on his knees, instantly understood what it wanted to express because his heavenly soul was about to completely merge with his yang spirit. His true form and his Yin spirit were connected seamlessly. Yu Yuan's Yin spirit, which had merged with the dragon beheading platform, understood immediately. Are you saying that I have to wait for my yang spirit to be successfully refined? Only then will it be the safest for me to meet the river of sword light? Yu Yuan tried to ask. The snow bear nodded repeatedly. I see. Therefore, Yu Yuan didn't say anything else. With the dragon beheading platform, he looked into the distant starry sky and the dozen or so realms shrouded in cold mist. He gradually sensed that Shi Quan, the withered sword, wasn't the only one hiding among them. Even Du Yuan and Yu Mu seemed to be quietly hiding in some star when they were about to approach the river of sword light. It seemed that they weren't in a hurry to save Ji Ningxuang, nor were they in a hurry to show themselves. He suddenly felt that something was strange. Suddenly, a spot of bright white light appeared in the starry sky beside him out of nowhere, and gave off extremely obvious spatial fluctuations. The frigid snow bear's eyes suddenly shone with a brutal light. Its huge bare paw directly moved towards the bright white light, as if it wanted to crush it before it could form a stable passage. It also intended to kill anyone who tried to come from it in the chaotic streams of space. Yu Yuan. The voice of Zhou Yu of the Tongtian Trading Company intermittently rang out from the bright white light. Yu Yuan was startled and immediately came to his senses. He hurriedly said, "Don't." The snow bear stopped in confusion. "A friend. My friend. I can trust him." Yu Yuan hastily explained, in case it mistook him for Pei Yuling or a powerful void spirit that had taken the opportunity to extend its tentacles into the domain of Firefly. It was obvious that it hated the void spirits very much. It also hated the races that were born because of them. As soon as it sensed the spatial fluctuations, It assumed that it was the divine butterfly that was causing trouble in the dark. With its strength and its compatibility with the Firefly space zone, it was as easy as crushing a stone for it to crush an unformed space channel. Zhou Yu would probably die before he could even reach the domain of Firefly. You scared me to death. The bright white light that was the size of a finger expanded into a fist and then stretched out. Zhou Yu, who was screaming, finally appeared beside the dragon beheading platform. His bloated body seemed to be about to burst through the spatial passage. He patted his chest and yelled. With a flick of his horsetail whisk, he smiled and said, "Qiao Yuling was right. You're really in the domain of Firefly." Yu Yuan laughed. "Long time no see, Mr. Zhou. I thought you'd make it in time when we were in the domain of Dark Forest. You really disappointed me." Yan Qiling had said that he had secretly sent a message, saying that Zhou Yu should come. Unfortunately, he hadn't been able to wait for reinforcements in the end. Fortunately, I didn't go. Otherwise, I don't know what would have happened to me. Zhou Yu shook his head and said with a panicked expression, "A void spirit, a fallen divine tree, and digs. Sigh. Why are you here?" Yu Yuan asked. Zhou Yu glanced at the frigid snow bear and frowned slightly. Apparently, he didn't trust the snow bear, so he didn't say anything. "It's okay," Yu Yuan said. "It's one of my people. It saved me many times in the domain of Firefly." "Saved you?" Zhou Yu coughed a few times with a strange expression and said, "This bear is one of the most famous beasts in the vast starry river. There are some descriptions and records about it in the secret records of our Chamber of Commerce. TSK. Not only were you not eaten alive by it, but it even saved you. I really don't understand." He was well informed. Before he had been imprisoned by Sword Prison, he had been an evil outsider who had run amok in the Starry River. Therefore, he was much more familiar with many of the most dangerous creatures in the Starry River than Yan Qiling. Yan Qiling had been imprisoned in the forbidden land of the fallen moons for too long, and hadn't had the chance to leave the Starry River before. Therefore, he was unfamiliar with the snow bear, and didn't know how powerful it was. "Let's not talk about that. All you need to know is that I trust it 100%, Yu Yuan said with a serious expression. "All right." Even though Zhou Yu still found it hard to accept, seeing how serious Nye Tian was, he didn't try to hide it anymore. Instead, he said excitedly, "Chen Qinghuang did something great after returning to the domain of Dark Wing." "What great thing?" Yu Yuan asked curiously. Zhou Yu took a deep breath and said, "That lair of death she took from the Thousand Birds realm was relocated to another realm in the domain of Dark Wing." Zhou Yu took a deep breath and said, "The Dark Wing domain has established a connection with Vast Ho's other two bases. From now on, all the powerful experts and demons who stand with us will be able to reach the domain of Dark Wing directly." Chapter 1339. The Howran realm was actually connected to the Dark Wing domain. The news brought by Zhou Yu was indeed shocking and inspiring. No wonder he wanted to avoid the snow bear before he spoke. He knew how intelligent the snow bear was, and the relationship between the snow bear and the Azura race. He probably didn't want the Azura race to know about this. She must be worried that the god of the Origin Realm's tentacles will extend to the Dark Wing domain. Her decision means that the winged race and the Howran realm can communicate with each other at any time, and she can ask for our help at a critical moment. Zhou Yu grinned. The death, destruction, and regeneration layers that Chen Qinghuang had refined were like crossings of stars. The three nests could still communicate with each other. The destruction and regeneration layers were located in the Howran realm, while the death layer was located in the Dark Wing domain. In this way, not only would the cultivators of the Howran realm be able to reach the Dark Wing domain instantly, but the members of the demonic abyss of calamity, the Shunhun sect, and the Chamber of Commerce might be able to come as well. After Diggs entered the 10th grade, it wouldn't be easy for him to take over the Dark Spirit race and the Winged race. Chen Qinghuang's return meant that he wanted to unite the Winged race and the Dark Spirit race. As the chief, Brizette would also push for this. Most of the Winged race and the Dark Spirit race's realms were close to each other, and they had close contact with each other. She had kept her promise and formed an alliance with the Shunhun sect and the Tongtian Trading Company. She should be able to recover her strength within a short time with the help of the Winged race and some wondrous item she had left behind. Once she returned to her peak, even the god of the Origin Realm and the Phantom of Void might not be able to defeat her. What if she had the help of the Shunhun sect and the Tongtian Trading Company? Yu Yuan's soul shadow on the dragon beheading platform suddenly smiled and said, "It seems that it won't be long before I return to Howren." "That's right," Zhou Yu nodded. "The Howren realm has changed greatly. It was no longer the case where the 5 forces could cover the sky with one hand. With our strength, the Aragami, Zhu-Un, and the new demon god from the Land of Terror, we are no weaker than the 5 forces. Many sects are starting to lean towards us. If you want to return, Yu Yuan, you can go to the domain of Darkwing right away and return to the Howren through that lair of death." Zhou Yu explained again. Because he didn't know what was going on with Fei Ying, he was anxious to figure it out. Therefore, he repeatedly used spatial secret techniques to travel through the Yulin Forest star zone to come here. The rest of the people would probably arrive one after another later. Is the entrance to the frigid abyss on the planet below? Zhou Yu suddenly changed the topic. Squinting, he looked down at the world that was shrouded in cold mist. "If this bear is here, I think the strange world in the domain of fireflies is down there." The frigid snow bear's huge eyes immediately glared over. Zhou Yu shrank his head and went to the other end of the dragon beheading platform to distance himself from the snow bear. Yu Yuan did not hide it from him. "It's indeed down there. Not long ago, Gu Xingkue from the Sword sect suddenly attacked it with his sword and injured it." Zhou Yu laughed dryly. "I got the news." Yu Yuan was taken aback. "How did you get the news?" "The sect master told me." After a moment of hesitation, Zhou Yu fixed his gaze on the frigid snow bear and said, "It has been wandering around the entrance to the frigid abyss for too long, and it has shed a lot of frost crystals." Gu Xingkue sensed that something was wrong, so he attacked it. The frost crystals at the entrance to the frigid abyss have been accumulating for a long time. Every 100 years, a few more frost crystals will form at the entrance to the frigid abyss. You can see those frost crystals as strengthened versions of the Frost Soul frost crystals. They have many wondrous uses. The entrance to the frigid abyss needs those frost crystals. If too many of them are shed, the entrance to the frigid abyss won't be very secure. So Gu Xingkue attacked it. Zhou Yu explained. A strange expression appeared on Yu Yuan's face. Now, one of the entrances to the frigid abyss is blocked. The Sword sect is feeling uneasy. All the forces in Howren who know about the entrance to the frigid abyss are worried. After a pause, Zhou Yu said, "Including us. The earth fire in Howren is too fierce. It needs to be channeled through the 7 entrances to the frigid abyss to create the frigid abyss of the 9 hells to neutralize it. Without the 7 entrances to the frigid abyss, all the mortals in the Qianxian Empire will die if the earth fire in Howren surges out. Even cultivators with low cultivation bases and demons won't be able to withstand it. Therefore, not only are the 5 forces paying close attention to the entrance to the frigid abyss, but the Shunhun sect and the Chamber of Commerce are also paying close attention to it. I came here this time in hopes of unblocking the entrance to the frigid abyss. I don't want to cause a disaster." As he spoke, he blinked his beady eyes and looked at the snow bear. Obviously, he knew that the reason the entrance to the frigid abyss was blocked was because of this furious snow bear. Gu Xingkue made the Sword sect pay for it. Yu Yuan refused to admit that the reason the entrance to the frigid abyss was blocked was because he wanted to get more frost crystals for Jining Shuang. Isn't the sword sect's price right in front of us? Zhou Yu pointed at the long river of sword light and clicked his tongue in admiration. Nie Qi Tian is indeed a peerless genius. I can't believe the sword light he left behind can last forever. I can sense the auras of Du Yuan, Yu Mu, and some other juniors of the sword sect. I'm afraid they're going to suffer. The Starfrost sword is here, Yu Yuan said in a deep voice. I'll save her. I know she's here. When Xiao Yuling mentioned her, I knew she must have come to the domain of Firefly to look for you. Zhou Yu let out a strange, ambiguous laugh. You're so lucky, brother Yu. If you can make this sharp sword betray the sword sect and stand with us, it'll be another great achievement. He knew that Yu Yuan had lived 2 lives, and had heard the story of Jining Shuang and Yu Yuan's previous lives. Back in the forbidden land of the fallen moons, Taisher successfully made Nie Qin Tian and the sword sect part ways with the help of the soul-dissolving pool. Since you're in charge of the dragon beheading platform, I wouldn't be surprised if you, as that person's successor, tried to make the Starfrost sword betray the Starfrost sword. Yu Yuan's expression flickered. He finally understood why Nie Qin Tian, who had been in charge of the forbidden land of the fallen moons, had slowly severed ties with the 5 major powers. The death of his partner was only one of the reasons. The other reason was that he must have communicated with Taisher, who was in the huge bronze coffin, when he had been in charge of the forbidden land of the fallen moons. I'll give it a try, Yu Yuan said with a serious expression on his face. Perhaps because of Jining Shuang's identity, he still needed to avoid talking about her. However, he wasn't worried. Zhou Yu thought that he was only the successor of the Dragon Slayer, but Taisher, the God King of the Shunhun sect, must know who he was. Otherwise, Taisher wouldn't have said those words to him before he had rushed out of the Howren. Since he had been one of the God Kings in his first life, what could the Shunhun sect say about what he wanted to do and how he interacted with Jining Shuang? She has a chance of entering the nascent divinity stage. If Gu Xingkue dies, she might be the one who has the highest chance of entering the nascent divinity stage. Zhou Yu's expression suddenly grew grim. If she enters the nascent divinity stage, she'll be even more formidable than Gu Xingkue. Therefore, we need to do everything we can to get her on our side. At the very least, we need to make sure that she doesn't help either side because of you. Zhou Yu represented the Chamber of Commerce, which meant that President Li and the Shunhun sect also attached great importance to Jining Shuang and realized how formidable she was. Oh! As the 2 of them spoke, a dazzling sword light suddenly bloomed near the long river of sword light in the distance. Their attention was instantly drawn to it. 1,000-foot-tall Kuei and Dharma idol holding a sword stood in the sky above a star of the Azura clan. Behind the Dharma idol, the true essence of the sword Tao that he had comprehended manifested a strange scene of destruction. It was as if countless worlds were disappearing and reappearing behind him. Streaks of sword light that flashed and transformed into all things were incomparably dazzling. The sword of destruction, Du Yuan. Zhou Yu's expression was grave. After a soft shout he said, "He's finally going to use his sword." Yu Yuan looked into the distance with his Yin soul, but he couldn't see Du Yuan's figure. He could only vaguely see the dazzling sword light gradually brightening. However, after he used the dragon-slaying platform, time and space seemed to be pulled closer. Thus, after Du Yuan revealed his Dharma idol, his eyes gradually became crazed on the surface of a cold and lonely star. At this moment, 3 platinum Azuras appeared near Du Yuan. Damien was among them. It seemed that Chief Commander Alonso had successfully found Du Yuan's hiding place, and had instructed Damien and the other 2 platinum Azuras to force Du Yuan out. Du Yuan had no choice but to reveal himself and no longer hide. Solitude Cage. Du Yuan, who was obviously still suppressing his mental state, looked at the moving river of sword light and the cage that imprisoned Jining Shuang. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and he smiled brightly. He said, "May I trouble the three of you to tell your commander to open the solitude cage and let the sword of Starfrost leave?" Also, Du-Yuan paused and continued, "We hope that the blocked entrance can be opened as soon as possible because this will be beneficial to both Howren and Azura." He was in the late stage of the Freedom Realm, and one of the oldest great sword immortals of the Sword Sect. But now, he was facing 3 Platinum Azuras in the Azura race's Firefly Star region. He also knew that Alonso, who had a rank 10 bloodline, was guarding this place. He actually dared to talk so arrogantly and ask Alonso to let the Azura race open the entrance to the frigid abyss. "I've heard that the most insane and unreasonable person in the Sword Sect is you, Sword of Destruction Du-Yuan. Now that I look at you, you really do live up to your reputation." An Azura who had just reached rank 9 bloodline and hadn't interacted with Du-Yuan before was angered by Du-Yuan's arrogance. "You will die in the Firefly Star region." The Platinum Azura called Warren snorted, and his eyes gradually turned silver-gray as he looked down. The world of stars below was covered in silver, and snow and ice filled the sky. There was no Azura race nation inside. Instead, there were silver wolves, ice pythons, and many strange beasts that liked the cold. Warren lowered his head. He wanted to know if the Sword of Heavenly Water, Yumu, and the other Yang God sword cultivators were down there. Strangely enough, he couldn't sense the whereabouts of Yumu and the other sword sect cultivators even after using his bloodline and his innate ability. They clearly saw Du-Yuan, Yumu, and the others flying on swords together. It was only when Alonso left with a drop of golden blood that Du-Yuan and Yumu's sword lights suddenly disappeared. Warren thought that Du-Yuan and Yumu were together. Since Du-Yuan had shown up, Yumu had to be there as well. Die in the Firefly Star region? Du-Yuan shook his head and chuckled. "I don't think so." Chapter 1340. The Sword of Destruction, Du-Yuan, was calm most of the time. He had hidden his deranged side for a long time. However, those who were familiar with him and had interacted with him before knew how difficult he was to deal with. Therefore, when Du-Yuan suddenly chuckled, Damien's expression suddenly changed as he shouted, "Watch out!" To Warren's left, the other older Platinum Azura, who had been observing Du-Yuan's expression closely all this time, felt his heart tighten. "Keep your distance," he shouted. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh! Thousands of sword lights suddenly appeared in the star world below. They appeared in the places where the silver wolves lived, in the cold caves where the ice pythons hid, and at the bottom of the sea where the frost beasts lived. The sword lights carried with them an aura that could destroy everything. They killed almost all the beasts on the star world below in an instant. A small golden jar appeared in the star world and started to grow rapidly. The streaks of sword light that had killed the beasts dragged their corpses into the jars. The golden jar kept collecting the beast corpses, as if it was going to sell them for a large amount of spirit stones in the future. Du-Yuan. Enraged, Damien instantly summoned the blood-boiling war drum and beat it with all his might. The deafening sound of the drum formed a terrifying sound wave that caused countless fine cracks to appear in the space where Du-Yuan's Dharma idol stood. Even space itself was shattered by the blood-boiling war drum. Hundreds of cracks appeared on Du-Yuan's towering Dharma idol in an instant, and it collapsed in an instant. However, in the next moment, Du-Yuan's Dharma idol reformed. He appeared in the extremely cold world where the beasts lived and gently held the golden jar that collected the beast corpses in its giant hand. "Not bad," he said with a hint of amusement in his eyes. Du-Yuan. The 3 Platinum Azuras who had been ordered to come were enraged by his calm and disdainful attitude. Therefore, the 3 Platinum Azuras led by Damien flew down one after another in anger, passed through the extremely thin realm barrier, and entered the inner world. The moment they landed, they were surprised to see that the realm barrier that enveloped the world below had suddenly changed. Streams of sword light intertwined with each other like trickling streams, weaving into a magical net in the realm barrier. The exquisiteness of water was born with the sword intent, slowly filling the boundary wall. Heavenly water net. The three platinum azuras immediately sensed that the barrier of this world had been refined by Yumu's sword intent. It had become a barrier that Yumu used to restrain them. My apologies, we wish to exchange the three of you for that, Alonso. Yumu's lazy and careless laughter came from the boundary wall of the entire world and from the brilliant heavenly water net. Du Yuan and Yumu worked together to set up a trap right under Alonso's nose and made the three platinum azuras fall into it. Zhou Yu's eyes, which were the size of rice grains, moved as he clapped his hands in praise. What's wrong with Alonso? Considering his bloodline grade and the crystal ball in his hand, he should have been able to perceive most of the anomalies in the realm barrier in the domain of Firefly. Zhou Yu found it hard to understand. Yu Yuan was also surprised. Through the dragon beheading platform, he saw that the heavenly water sword's sword intent had suddenly appeared in the realm barrier as soon as Damien and the other Azuras had entered the world where the beasts live. Then, he discovered that Yumu had refined a realm barrier into his sword net without anyone noticing. When Zhou Yu said that Alonso of the Azura race had a subtle connection to the many realm barriers in the domain of Firefly, he realized that Alonso's mistake might have been because of him. Because he had used the dragon beheading platform to threaten Xiala and wreak havoc in that cold world, Alonso had arrived. Du Yuan and Yumu seemed to have sensed that Alonso's soul had only left for a short time. Therefore, they had hidden themselves and set up a trap in secret. That was why this scene had occurred. In a battle between experts, the slightest mistake or carelessness could trigger a chain reaction that could lead to all kinds of unpredictable changes. Whoosh! A grayish-white sword light that was filled with a strong aura of death flashed from another star. Shi Quan. Zhou Yu frowned, a strange expression appearing on his face. That crazy woman actually charged into that river of sword light right after Du Yuan. She must be crazy. Can't she see that Alonso has been waiting for her there for a long time? Through the dragon beheading platform's vision, Yu Yuan also saw Shi Quan, who was wielding her withering sword, travel thousands of miles in a breath, like a rainbow that pierced through the starry river. Du Yuan's sword of destruction carries the charm of destroying and blowing up all living beings, Zhou Yu said. His withering sword, on the other hand, carries the power to send all living beings on the path of death. Why is the sword Dao they've comprehended so similar to Chen Qinghuang's destruction and death power? Yu Yuan asked curiously. You're right. Zhou Yu gave him an affirmative answer first, then explained. Du Yuan's sword of annihilation and Shi Quan's sword of withering, the core secrets and truths of the great Dao are actually the same as destruction and death. Most of the time, great Daos are interconnected and have many things in common. After a moment of pondering, Zhou Yu said in a low voice, that Empress is called the Immortal Bird. Why is she immortal? Because she can come back to life. Being able to come back to life means that she won't die. That's why she's called the Immortal Bird. It's said that the mysteries of rebirth are the original power that she was born with, which is branded in her bloodline and heart. As for the truths of destruction and death power, some say that she took them from other star behemoths. The destruction behemoth, the wing of death, seems to be the first star behemoth to be born. After she killed it, she took the mysteries of destruction and death for herself. As Zhou Yu said these words, he glanced at the location of the dark wing domain, seeming rather cautious. Yu Yuan was taken aback. In fact, he had long since speculated about this. He assumed that the immortal bird, who was second only to the Titanspinosaurus in the first rank of star behemoths, had also obtained other mysteries through fierce and bloody battles. As the king of star behemoths, the Titanspinosaurus had hunted the most of its kind. Perhaps it had even hunted the descendants of the destruction behemoth and the wing of death. After it had obtained the mysteries of destruction and death, it had brought them to Hauran and turned them into laws of fortune and Tao, which had been branded into the laws of Hauran. Du Yuan and Shi Quan were the experts who had been lucky enough to come into contact with them, perceive their mysteries, and integrate them into their sword Tao. Do Du Yuan and Shi Quan have any hope of entering the nascent divinity realm? Yu Yuan asked aloud. The immortal bird has already mastered the ultimate truths of destruction and death in the starry river. Do they still have a chance? Hauran is Hauran, and the outside world is the outside world. The two are separate. Zhou Yu rubbed his round chin and chuckled. If we don't count them separately and there are already void spirits, we won't be able to produce a level 10 spacetime dragon. Shura of Gojosian Sabonis has comprehended the true essence of the power of metal and the sharpness of his bloodline. He has something in common with President Li. This won't stop President Li from entering the nascent divinity realm. In fact, when he was in the Thousand-Bird realm, he also wanted to kill Sabonis and let President Li refine his golden blood. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. Zhou Yu hesitated for a moment, then said, "Those who come from vast expanse only need to see if there are any fellow Daos within vast expanse, and if there are any great Dao competitors." President Li's original opponent, the person he had to be most wary of, was actually the ancient god Golden Elephant of the Goblin Temple. Now that the ancient god Golden Elephant is dead, his path forward will be unobstructed. What he lacks now is just a new seat, that's all. Fatty Zhou's words cleared up many of the doubts in Yu Yuan's heart. It was also because of this that he knew that Du Yuan and Shi Quan both had a chance to charge into the seats of the paramount nascent divinity realm by relying on the swords of destruction and withering. They would not be restricted by Chen Qinghuang. Shi Quan's opponent might be the White Crane, because the White Crane also understood the mysteries of death. So, your future enemies are very likely to be Pei Yuling and Yan Qiling? Yu Yuan was stunned. Zhou Yu nodded slowly and didn't deny it. However, he quickly got over it and said casually, "Strictly speaking, Mr. Yan isn't my opponent. Because the shape of his soul isn't right, and his body isn't natural. He probably doesn't have a chance to reach the supreme seats of the nascent divinity realm. If he forcefully tries, he will only end up with his soul scattered." Yu Yuan was stunned for a moment before she understood what was going on. He remembered that Yan Qiling's original form was only the soul of the soul-splitting rod. Yan Qiling and Yu Yi in the fiendish demon cauldron were the same. Even though he had refined a body and comprehended the mysteries of space, he didn't have a physical body to rely on. He couldn't be classified as a normal life form. Therefore, he couldn't reach the end of his path of great Tao. No wonder Yan Qiling and Yu Yi got along so well. Both of them were members of the Shenhun sect. They had similar experiences, and their forms and origins were similar. "Is he all right?" Yu Yuan asked. "He's fine. He's already returned to the demonic abyss of calamity. They probably learned about the location of the lair of death in the Dark Wing domain later. He and the fiendish demon cauldron should have been waiting for you when you went to the Dark Wing domain," Zhou Yu said with a smile. In the distance, Du Yuan and Yu Mu, the heavenly water sword, had surrounded the three platinum Azuras in an attempt to injure or capture them and negotiate with Alonso. Shi Quan flew alone on her sword and was about to reach the river of sword light. Yu Yuan and Zhou Yu were paying attention to the situation as if they were outsiders. They even had the time to talk. A while later, Xiala, carrying the Dark Realm Cold Well, flew out of the frozen world Yu Yuan had destroyed, and returned to this place. Xiala looked at the chubby Zhou Yu, her expression changing. Then, she looked at the frigid snow bear with a serious expression and asked in the language of the Azura race, "General and Chief, I'm here to ask for your opinion." The snow bear growled. The growl was filled with anger, fierceness, and killing intent. Shiala nodded and said, "I understand. Thank you." Chapter 1341. After Shiala expressed his gratitude, he glanced at Yu Yuan and Zhou Yu with a gloomy face, then turned and left. She had clearly come because of the frigid snow bear. Even the appearance of the unfamiliar Zhou Yu did not attract her interest. The snow bear's nod and affirmative answer seemed to put her at ease. She was reassured that this violent bear, who had a great place in the history of the Azura race, would stand on their side at a crucial time. That was enough. After she left, the frigid snow bear's eyes, which were as cold as ice crystals, seemed to shine several times brighter in that instant, as if something had been secretly triggered within them. Boom! The world of absolute frost below shook slightly. In the invisible depths of the earth, some laws seemed to be activated by its bloodline and rearranged. It seemed to have awakened a new power full of killing intent. Hundreds of millions of miles away, the long river of sword light that had been moving in a zigzag direction suddenly stopped. A strong sense of danger rose in Yu Yuan's heart. Of course he knew that this strange, frigid snow bear wasn't targeting him or trying to kill him. But he felt that after the frigid snow bear communicated with Shirala, it seemed to have given a clear attitude to Chief Commander Alonso and Shura of Gojoseon Sabonis. This attitude made Shirala very satisfied. The Azura King, who possessed a peak rank 10 bloodline, and the great Commander Alonso, had asked Shirala to come over personally to demand a clear answer. The Azura race, whose glorious battle record was second only to the Celestial Devils, valued it so much. Yu Yuan was shocked. Zhou Yu also had a shocked expression. He had heard many rumors about this violent bear, but he had never truly interacted with it. Therefore, he did not expect that Shura of Gojoseon Sabonis and Chief Commander Alonso would arrange for a Platinum Azura to ask for its opinion. It seemed that the other side would only respond fiercely if it nodded. What kind of power did it possess? What kind of magic did it have to the Azura race? What right did it have to make the entire Azura race treat it with caution? Zhou Yu could not understand. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! Suddenly, 7 dazzling sword lights shot out from the river of sword lights that had come to a standstill. The 7 sword lights had different auras. One was as clear as a mountain stream, one was as hot as a burning meteor, one gave off a murderous aura, one carried the aura of fate and reincarnation, and one was as bright as the sun of spring. 7 streaks of sword light of different thicknesses descended upon the absolute cold heaven and earth sealed by the heavenly water net. All of a sudden, the faint sword intent at the bottom of the scabbard of the heaven-raising sword, which had been lying quietly on Yu Yuan's knees, resonated with it. Both Yu Yuan's true body and Een divinity shuddered. His true body was still tempering his body, but his Een spirit on the dragon-slaying platform suddenly looked at the snow bear. At this moment, the snow bear had turned its back to him. Its back, which was as strong as a majestic snowy mountain, was filled with an aura that Yu Yuan found strange. It was as if it had become a strange sword immortal that had been sealed for thousands of years and studied the way of the sword. Sword intent was faintly born from its body. Under the fur on its back, there seemed to be sword marks that were covered by the thick fur. It was as if it had accompanied Nye Qingtian to practice the way of the sword tens of thousands of years ago. It was as if Nye Qingtian, who had not yet ascended to the supreme primordial spirit, had accompanied it and used it to practice the way of the sword. He had even taught it the true meaning of the way of the sword. It seemed to have touched upon the wonders of the way of the sword. Heavens! It's actually a sword cultivator. Zhou Yu, who had always been calm, was dumbfounded because of this. He looked at the legendary violent bear, as if he was looking at a monster and felt the subtle sword intent that was slowly born from its body. Zhou Yu's mouth was so wide open that it could fit a small watermelon. He even unconsciously rubbed his eyes. It seemed that he wanted to see more clearly the secret records of the Chamber of Commerce, the writings of the 5 supreme forces of Hauran, and any sect or person who knew about the violent bear had never said that it had comprehended the way of the sword. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed it even if someone told him. A violent bear, who was known for its cruelty and fierceness, who had lived for who knew how long, and who sometimes didn't show up for hundreds of years, had comprehended the intricacies of the way of the sword through Nye Qingtian. Moreover, it wasn't just one way of the sword. How did it do it? Yu Yuan, it might be your senior brother. You probably wouldn't have thought that before you, that person actually imparted the profound way of the sword sect to a snow bear, right? What's even more shocking is that it actually comprehended it. There's sword intent in its body, and there are obvious sword marks on its body. Zhou Yu's voice grew louder as he spoke. He danced with joy as if he had discovered a new continent. Yu Yuan, on the other hand, was stunned and didn't say anything for a long time. He stared blankly at the back of the frigid snow bear, and felt the sword marks on its broad back. They were roughly the same as the ones in his arm bone. However, it wasn't the 9 slashes to the sky. It was a sword art comprehended by other great sword immortals who had died in battle in the outer realms. He finally understood why the frigid snow bear could use cold mist to surround the long river of sword lights, and why it could affect the long river of sword lights and cause part of the resonance. It was because in the depths of the long river of sword lights, there was the subtle sword intent that it had comprehended. This mysterious snow bear might have been one of Nye Qingtian's few friends thousands of years ago, or even tens of thousands of years ago. Nye Qingtian had lived a lonely and arrogant life. He viewed all the heroes of the world as his opponents and the common people as whetstones. He had never taken any disciples, and he didn't like to practice the way of the sword with others. After his only lover died, he didn't even pay attention to his fellow disciples of the sword sect. He also turned a deaf ear to many of the sword sect's orders. No one would have thought that he would have the leisure to partner up with a strange beast from beyond the heavens and teach it the way of the sword. He even used the beast to practice the way of the sword. Zhou Yu was right. In a sense, this frigid snow bear could be considered his senior brother because it had once learned the way of the sword from Nye Qingtian, and it had clearly reached a higher level. Whoosh! Whoosh! While Yu Yuan and Zhou Yu were thinking, 7 sword lights that contained different meanings easily tore apart the sky water net and tore apart the sword energy that Yu Mu had merged into the realm wall. Yu Mu let out a muffled grunt. Due to the tearing of the sky water net, he seemed to have been injured in an instant. After a muffled grunt, he who had disappeared without a trace anxiously shouted, "Watch out!" The sword lights did not stop. They continued to slash towards Du Yuan's tall Dharma idol. 7 sword lights in a row. Each sword energy was vast, majestic, and majestic. The Dharma idol of Sword of Destruction, Du Yuan, who was ranked 3rd in the late stage of the Freedom Realm, shattered, reformed, and shattered again. This cycle repeated a total of 5 times. 7 sword lights came down, and Du Yuan's Dharma idol shattered one after another. After 5 times, it finally returned to its original, regular form. It seemed that he was unable to form another Dharma idol in a short period of time. He was unable to use his full strength, and naturally, he was unable to trap the 3 platinum Azuras. Not only was he unable to trap the injured Du Yuan, Yu Mu, whose sky water net had been torn apart, was also being suppressed by Damien. The situation was instantly turned around by the 7 sword lights. The 3 platinum Azuras, who had felt that everything was awkward just a moment ago, were also shocked. Even they did not seem to have expected that 7 sword lights would help them attack Yu Mu and Du Yuan. The 2 great sword immortals of the sword sect were caught off guard and injured. However, this did not stop them from immediately becoming excited and surrounding Du Yuan. Du Yuan, who was holding the golden jar with one hand, had a somewhat dazed expression on his face when his Dharma idol shattered. The madness and bloodlust that had appeared in his eyes just now seemed to have shattered along with his Dharma idol. At this moment it no longer existed. He was familiar with the true essence of the way of the sword contained within the 7 sword lights. Moreover, the creators of 3 of the sword lights had fought alongside him against the experts of the foreign races. The other 4 had been created by the great sword immortals of the sword sect in an even earlier era. They were his ancestors. When he was learning the way of the sword, he had seen the sword intent of the 4 sword light. However, they did not match his goals, so he did not choose them. Du Yuan naturally believed that the person who could comprehend the 7 sword arts and use them had to be a member of the sword sect and should be one of them. Why did they attack him? Also, where did the 7 sword lights come from? He looked at Yu Mu. After the sky water net was torn apart, Yu Mu's figure appeared below the realm wall and above the sky. Yu Mu's face was ashen as he looked up at the sky. His gaze passed through the thin realm wall and looked at the river of sword lights that had completely stopped. He looked at the river of sword lights that were not very wide. There were 3. The 7 sword lights came from these 3 river of sword lights, as if the power that had been sealed for thousands of years had been activated by someone far away and then slashed at him with great precision. "Senior Hong, is that you?" Yu Mu cursed inwardly. He seemed very unhappy and dissatisfied. He felt that he and Yu Yuan had the same original intention. They were both here to save the Sword of Starfrost. Moreover, he believed that the Sword of Starfrost was trapped because Yu Yuan was in the field of fireflies, which led to Jin Ningxuang's forced intrusion and the current situation. Yu Yuan had used the 9 slashes to raise the sky, that he had comprehended to trigger the sword lights left by that person to attack him? Yu Mu was very unhappy. At the same time, Shi Quan, who was riding the withered sword and was about to charge to the shattered star where Alonso was, suddenly stopped halfway and hurriedly stopped. Her pale face was also filled with shock and confusion. Who was triggering the remaining power in the river of sword lights to attack Du Yuan and Yu Mu? Could it be Yu Yuan? Like Yu Mu, she naturally thought that Yu Yuan, who had comprehended the 9 slashes to raise the sky, should have triggered the power of the river of sword lights somewhere and then slashed down with his sword. That's not right. Shi Quan frowned. She was as puzzled as Yu Mu. She could not understand why Yu Yuan would attack at this time. Did this heartless man want junior sister to die? Shi Quan clenched her teeth. Chapter 1342. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, everyone from Howren would have thought that Yu Yuan was the one who had triggered the 7 sword lights. The rivers of sword lights were the result of the sword power Nye Qingtian had left behind, and the power he had accumulated over a long period of time. Nye Qingtian had never had a disciple. He hadn't taught anyone the 9 slashes to the heaven raising when he had been alive. Even the sword sect didn't have a copy of the profound sword intent of the 9 slashes to the heaven raising. Until now, Yu Yuan had only been able to imprint the incantation on his arm after he had accidentally entered the forbidden land of the falling moons and obtained the acknowledgement of the heaven-raising sword's soul. Then, he had seen the sword incantation on the wall of the soul refining pool. With the help of the sword incantation and the help of the sword soul, Yu Yuan had been able to comprehend the profundity of the 9 slashes of raising the heavens and gain a glimpse of the true essence of this sword incantation. He was Nye Qingtian's legacy disciple. Who else could it be if he wasn't the one behind this? Also, Hadn't he come from the domain of dark forest to this place because of the river of sword lights? Many Azura experts, Howran experts, and Shi Quan, who was about to charge towards Alonso, all secretly believed that Yu Yuan was behind this. Other than Alonso and Shiala, there were also Zhou Yu and Yu Yuan himself. Savage Bear. Savage Bear. Even Shiala, who had left in a hurry after delivering the message, suddenly learned this shocking secret. She shrewdly sensed that it wasn't Yu Yuan, who had unleashed a profound sword intent over the barrier of the frigid abyss, who she had been trailing behind, who she had thought was Yu Yuan. It was the mysterious Savage Bear, who was closely related to the Azuras. Not only had Savage Bear created a frigid mist that enveloped the rivers of sword lights, but it had also derived the profound truths of Sword Tao, which allowed it to control part of the river of sword lights. Finally, Shiara was convinced, and he respected this violent bear even more. It also understood why even the clan leader and the commander-in-chief had to consult its opinion and attitude. It was not without reason that his clansmen revered him as a god. In the special Firefly space zone where the mouth of frigid abyss existed, it could control part of the sword energy, and it was naturally compatible with the local universe. Wasn't it equal to a god? Beside the stagnant long river of sword light, Jining Shuang, who was trapped in the plain falling cage, had just guided a streak of star frost into her body. While she was pondering how to refine it, she also noticed that 7 streaks of sword aura with different meanings had flown out of the 3 rivers of sword aura and slashed at the star that Du Yuan and Yu Mu had set up together. She saw the heavenly water net being torn apart and Du Yuan's Dharma form shattering, reforming and shattering again. Her slender eyebrows moved slightly as if she was surprised. In front of her, Alonso, who had a gentle temperament and a handsome face, chuckled and said with a gentle tone that made people feel like they were bathing in the spring breeze, "Are you surprised?" "A little." Jining Shuang nodded and did not deny it. She, who was trapped in the plain falling cage, did not look like a prisoner at all. She was terrifyingly calm. At this time, she suddenly turned around and narrowed her bright eyes slightly. She said softly, "Senior sister, I don't need your help. Go back to where you came from." Alonso's gaze went past the plain falling cage and looked at the grayish-white sword aura that had stopped halfway. He said softly, "You came from afar. Don't tell me you're going to turn around and go back without using your sword? Hee, I know you won't. The sword art you've comprehended won't let you do that." Lola and the other Platinum Azura looked at the place where the sword aura was hovering with cold and provocative eyes. Shi Quan snorted coldly. After being provoked by Alonso, she chose to fly over on her sword again. Whoosh! The slender white bone sword she controlled suddenly stopped behind the plain falling cage. She stood on the sword, her tall and thin figure giving off a strong sense of deathly stillness. The expressions of Lola and the surrounding Azura race warriors turned serious as she approached. Shi Quan, who cultivated the withered sword, had not shown herself for a long time because she had been imprisoned by the sword art for too long. Many young Azura race experts had not come into contact with her, and did not know her origins or the terror of her sword art. Lola had heard of Shi Quan's legend before, but the two had never had the chance to fight in the outer realms. They were not familiar with each other. But now, she felt Shi Quan with her bloodline latent ability and immediately knew that she was extraordinary. "Why did you come to Feiying?" Jining Shuang rolled her eyes at her with a reproachful gaze. "You're doing well in the Chamber of Commerce. Why did you get involved in this mess?" "Because I know you're stupid," Shi Quan said angrily. Jining Shuang immediately fell silent. No one dared to speak to her like this in almost 100 years, including the 2 nascent Soul Realm experts of the Sword Sect, Du Yuan and the others. In recent years, their attitudes were very gentle. They would not be like this. In the vast sea of stars, other than Yu Yuan back then, this senior sister in front of her was the only one who had scolded her. This feeling was unfamiliar to her, but also she felt warmth she had not felt in a long time. Heartless, heartless, heartless man! You broke the rules of the Forbidden Grounds and forced your way into Feiying for such a person. Is it worth it? Shi Quan was furious. I've seen that person before. He's the same as back then. In his heart, there is only himself. Look at what he has done. After he was reborn, when did he lack female companions? One after another, there was no end to it. Are you blind? Can't you see? Can't you hear? What about now? You were trapped by the plane falling cage. Du Yuan and Yu Mu wanted to save you. What did he do? He chose to use his sword. Why didn't those 7 sword lights fall on the plane falling cage? Why didn't they break your shackles? You should be like me, dismantle his arm bones and refine them into 2 immortal swords. Filled with righteous indignation, Shi Quan cursed Yu Yuan, spewing out profanities. Alonso, Lola, and many high-ranking Azura generals looked at the agitated, withered sword with strange expressions. Because of this, the tense atmosphere became a little off. It's not him. Jining Shuang shook her head calmly in the plane falling cage. Her beautiful eyes were as clear as a mountain stream. Shi Quan's curses immediately stopped. She knew her junior sister's ability. She knew that Jining Shuang's Tao heart was clear and pure from the day she entered the sword sect to learn the sword. She naturally resonated with many sword arts. Back then, when Jining Shuang had just entered the sword cavern, she had caused a shocking spectacle that made many immortal swords cry. Since she was so sure, Shi Quan instantly believed her judgment. She didn't even ask the reason or the specific situation. Alonso was stunned. He shot a deep look at Jining Shuang and nodded, saying, "Sure enough, it's because you're too outstanding that everyone thinks highly of you. May I ask, how did you know that the person who triggered the 7 sword lights wasn't that kid from the Shenhun sect?" Jining Shuang didn't respond. She clearly wasn't interested in answering. "That's good." Alonso chuckled as he nodded and said, "I also want to see if you really have the ability to break out of this cage unscathed. Originally, I was still hesitating on how to force you. There's no need for that now." He pointed at withered sword, Shi Quan, and signaled with his eyes. Lola and the other Platinum Azura immediately understood. They turned into 2 bright silver rays of bloody light and flew toward Shi Quan, who was hovering above the white bone sword. Alonso held the crystal ball in one hand and casually stuffed his empty other hand into the crystal ball. His wrist turned slightly as if he was searching for something in the strange world inside the crystal ball. In that instant, the crystal ball seemed to be smeared with golden light and became bright. Whoosh! He pulled out a strange gauze-like substance shrouded in cold mist and casually tossed it to Shi Quan. If one looked closely, they would discover that this so-called gauze was actually the boundary wall of some extremely cold world. He had pulled down the boundary wall of a world and used it to restrain Shi Quan. Shi Quan, who held her sword with one hand and was surrounded by a deathly still sword essence, immediately discovered that the sword light she drew couldn't break through the boundary wall after being trapped by Alonso's boundary wall. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.